Hey everyone. Welcome back for part 2 of What If Naruto Was the Emperor. As always, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, especially with all the restrictions YouTube places on my type of content. As always, the full story is already out over there for you guys along with about 30 other different stories you can enjoy. Also, feel free to send me any messages over there if you have any questions or even if you just want to chat. Link to all of that will be in the description. Anyways, everyone, enjoy the video. Chapter 5. It was midnight. Naruto was sitting by the window of his hotel room, alone in the darkness. It was fine, he was used to the darkness. So many times he'd sit through in his apartment, not even realizing that the sun had already set. How disappointing, Jiraiya said as he appeared within the room. Naruto glanced at the Sannin for a moment before looking back outside of his window. The night was truly a peaceful time, perhaps a bit of his favorite time. Back in the Hidden Leaf, it had been his moment to be free, to feel like that whole of Konoha was off his back. What are you looking for, sensei? I thought I'd see you getting some action. The perverted Sannin said in a sad tone. Like I'd allow you to get that close, Naruto said in a calm tone. Sometimes it is best to just know people, sensei. Friends are not truly bad people to have around. Jiraiya frowned. I think you have a different definition of what a friend is. It is certainly not the same line as I do. The Sannin stated. It was strange to hear from Naruto. On the outward everything looked fine because Naruto didn't avoid people like they were a plague. He actually talked casually and smiled with people, but there was a certain distance that one could not push through. Naruto didn't like going personal. There was always a side of him that he didn't want people to see, a side of him that Jiraiya wanted to know and thought getting closer slowly would change things. It hasn't been working all too well so far. Naruto didn't reveal too much behind that mask of indifference. He had his moments when he let out a couple of things, but it was far and few between the storylines, far in between for him to piece together. It was almost as if he only released details when he knew you wouldn't be able to make something out of it. That is something else to say, sensei, Naruto said. But to get to know people is a good thing. They may not become your friends, but they certainly become people you can connect with. In your line of work, you cannot do much with those connections. But what would be the use of making connections, in your part, I mean? Who knows? Naruto responded with a shake of his head. Sometimes people do the most ridiculous things that you really cannot begin to explain. This again, Jiraiya frowned. It wasn't going to take him anywhere. What do you think about the shinobi world, Naruto? Jiraiya asked after a couple of moments of silence. Naruto eyed the Sannin at the corner of his eyes but didn't offer an immediate response. What of the shinobi? It was kill or be killed. Rule or be ruled. If you have power, you can do whatever you want and no one will say anything unless it affects their interests, but if the benefit outweighs the losses, a blind eye can be turned. No one did anything without expecting something in return. But Jiraiya knew this world. He understood it better, having spent much time traveling and having fought in past wars. It was another test. The temptations of this world. He was always being tempted in each corner he turned to, wasn't it? What does it matter what I think about this world, sensei? Naruto asked in a curious tone. It matters, Naruto. Your view of our world shapes your ideals, your dreams, Jiraiya said in a firm tone. Everyone has a thought and everyone wants something. We all have duties to our villages, but we still have dreams. Some shinobi dream nothing but services to their village, Naruto said. He thought of Itachi at this moment. But yes, that attitude is based on what is important to them. To determine that, you do need to have a view on the world around. If you can say those words, why do you need to ask why your view matters? Jiraiya asked with a raised eyebrow. Then again, Naruto could simply be speaking his thoughts but not something he actually believes in. This trait bothered him. There were many times he couldn't tell if Naruto actually believed in what he was saying or was simply just saying it. My question was to you, on your personal level, sensei, Naruto said calmly. You can say you need to know because you are my sensei, but haven't you said that a student should always carry the teachings of his master? You get an apprentice to share your dreams and carry on with your will. That has been the desire, hasn't it? It was indeed true. He had shared his dreams with the Ame orphans and he'd heard of the good that they had been doing. It had honestly surprised him. But he had been happy. Yet sad that they ended up dying. In our situation, it doesn't really look like you are doing what I want. You have your own goals and although you seemed interested in my dreams, you have not made any commitment. Jiraiya started firmly. I am your sensei, I must know where you stand. If it is the wrong path, I need to be able to correct you. If the path is good, I need to be able to assist you as your sensei. I see, Naruto said. I have wondered, Jiraiya. But I still cannot form a conclusive view of the shinobi world. There is a lot of bad than good. Should I do something about it? Should I simply be loyal to my village and do what is best for it? I cannot yet answer those questions. Naruto shook his head lightly. If you need help with understanding something, please talk to me, Naruto. I know you prefer to figure things on your own, but you have friends, colleagues to help you in such cases, Jiraiya said in a hardened tone, just to drive the message through. I have not been shy in asking questions, Jiraiya-sensei, Naruto said. But I have always decided for myself. It is true that I was close to the Sandaime, but he did not have the same kind of influence on me as you would have on your students. I loved the old man because he loved me. But I formed my ideas depending on how I saw things. Perhaps Jiraiya should have seen this as a red light blinking, but he wanted to have hope. There is nothing wrong with being independent, but be careful. You don't want to stray too far. Without observing and listening to other people, you are likely to cloud your own thoughts and drift away from reality. With my past, I cannot drift away from reality, sensei. I know what is real and what false hope is. An illusion one paints to live in glory, Naruto said. Why did you bring this up? Tsunade wants to know what your thoughts are about Uzu. If the Uzumaki have indeed revived and offer you an invitation, would you accept it? This question again. People were really too curious. But could he fault them? He was the only Uzumaki living in the Hidden Leaf, and with his past, they had to be curious. They must be dying to know. Naruto thought perhaps that if some villagers knew about this, they'd certainly wish that he go home. Most people in Konoha have forgotten about the clan. They didn't even know where the symbol on their shinobi vests came from, and yet, they knew very well that their founding father, Hashirama, was married to Uzumaki. Maybe she was just Mito and Uzumaki was nothing more than a name, just a meaningless name. Ignorance. If they came now, I would reject the invitation. Naruto responded while staring at the Sannin. After saying that, he turned his gaze outside of the room. Why? You are a proud Uzumaki. Anybody who looks can tell that much. And you don't even hide it. Jiraiya asked with narrowed eyes. Should I not be proud of my mother's name, Jiraiya? By all accounts I should be Namikaze, isn't it? Jiraiya frowned. Kushina was married to Namikaze. Naruto's forename was supposed to be his father's, but because the Sandaime wanted to separate Naruto from Minato, he gave him his mother's forename. If Naruto wanted to, he could change, but it was not going to happen. Yes. Jiraiya finally responded. But my circumstances robbed me of that legacy. I should have inherited my father's legacy as his only child, but I did not. Perhaps if I had, I would be proud to be Namikaze, Naruto said in a thoughtful tone. But Uzumaki was the first thing I heard. It was the first good news. And the Sandaime said to me, it is your clan. I grew up being proud of that. I had nothing else to be proud of. The villagers resented me. Uzumaki was my happy moment. Jiraiya cursed himself once more. Had he been a little responsible, had he thought things clearly, he could have taken Naruto away from the village and raised him. Naruto would have experienced happiness and a happy childhood. He could have returned him when he was old enough to ignore everything else. But he did nothing. He kept chasing women, intel, Orochimaru, and running away from problems. A pathetic life. His regrets. They were heavy. I understand them, but why would you still not take any invitation? Because sensei, if they come now, it won't be because I am Uzumaki but because I could be useful. I honestly can't allow myself to be used like that. Jiraiya nodded. If they'd come when you were younger? I would have jumped on the chance to leave my misery behind, Naruto said. Because then I would have known that they are coming to me because they want me. Because I am Uzumaki and it would be an escape from hell. I am not that miserable anymore, Naruto said. He said it like that, and for some reason, Jiraiya felt thankful that they did not come. It was selfish of him. If they had come earlier, Naruto would have had a better childhood. He wouldn't have experienced as much pain as he did. Jiraiya felt disgusted for his thoughts. He didn't voice them. He kept them to himself. The Toad Sage smiled miserably. I will write to Tsunade and tell her your thoughts. She was really worried, you know. She cares for you and really doesn't want to lose you. Naturally. You don't want to lose people you care for, Naruto said. That is why we sometimes kill, isn't it, sensei? Jiraiya nodded. Yeah. Silence reigned in for a couple of moments. Naruto was fine with it. But Jiraiya didn't let it last for long as he lifted his chin and spoke once more. We are worried because we don't know what Uzu's motives are, Jiraiya said. Recently, I was informed that Iwa's spies were killed and their heads were sent back. We know that spies don't return, but they've never done something like this. And it is going to cause some reaction from the hidden stone. Naruto nodded. I wonder how they will react. We are going to find out. We? Yeah. We are heading to Iwa tomorrow morning, Jiraiya said. I wanted you to know that. Tsunade wants me to find out what they want to do. I could send spies, but I need to hear from the Tsuchikage. What do you want to find out? Naruto asked. What he plans to do, and if there is something that needs to be done, I will have to do something about it, Jiraiya said firmly. Konoha had no formal relations with the current Uzu, but they didn't want a repeat of what happened last time around. He did believe that Iwa would try to do something about it. They could plot Uzu's downfall. Kiri wasn't being put in the picture because it was currently recovering from its civil war and had closed its doors to focus on rebuilding. They would surely not try to do anything that would attract bloodshed. Naruto merely nodded his head but said nothing about the matter. I guess I should rest and I might have to face Kurotsuchi, he said with a sigh. Why do you say it like it's a bad thing? It's not, Naruto said with a shake of his head. She is just a bit of a difficult person. She might be thankful or mad that I tricked her into getting drunk. Either way, you'll get out of it. You continue to overstate my persuasive skills, Naruto said. The following day. Naruto wasn't wearing his armor, he decided to put it away. He was comfortable with wearing it, so he would no longer have to adjust to anything when he does have to wear it during battle. In the future, he would have days where he sets out to battle, and in those moments, he would depart wearing the armor, but unless otherwise, he would be dressed a bit formally. He was already away from the hidden cloud, traveling slowly with the Toad Sage. Any reason we had to sneak out of Kumo? Naruto certainly hoped that the Sannin didn't piss off some people and that was why they had to sneak out. Jiraiya responded with a shrug. A force of habit, and I wanted to see if you had it in you. The Sannin said. Had it in me? Naruto asked. You know, I had to practice being invisible in the streets of Konoha just to avoid the glares. It was an interesting experiment and there were some failures there and then. Success? It was there, Naruto said. But as you know, I don't talk much about my conquests, he said. Jiraiya nodded. We should start talking Fuinjutsu before you go back to Konoha. You know, you are Uzumaki and you are truly proud of it, it won't be bad to know sealing. You have said you know things, practicing it should make you even prouder. I cannot disagree to that, Naruto said. You know, when looking at current seals, I think the standards have really dropped. I have been inclined to look at some sealing and say pathetic. Most of the seals in Konoha were originally developed by the Uzumaki, and when you look at it, there is no other village that can match them. Every village has something that it excels in, and the Uzumaki truly worked wonders when it came to Fuinjutsu. Their skills were just a bit too complex, Jiraiya said. Even though I call myself a Fuinjutsu master, by Uzumaki standards, I am nothing. No need to be bitter about it, Naruto said with a shrug. Where to after Iwa? We will see. If information comes around, we will probably head to either Amigakure or Kiri, Jiraiya said. Konoha. Tsunade hated herself for this, but there was just no helping things. She needed to make use of Danzo's services now more than ever. Of course, she couldn't trust him, but she still had to use him. If he does something he isn't supposed to do, she was sacking him. If he did anything treasonous, she was going to hang him while his friends watch. She wasn't going to have him do as he pleases under her watch. Her sensei allowed it and indulged the man. He allowed Danzo to do as he pleases. She would not. Of course, this represented another threat. Danzo could influence things, but there was no going about things without taking the risks. She had Jiraiya to count on if Danzo does something he isn't supposed to do. Given the room, the War Hawk could possibly try to set alight the flames of war for Konoha's gain. Ridiculous. Then again, the Leaf did have that kind of history, and this man really did play some part in it. A corrupted past that tainted the image of this image. Certainly not something her grandfather had envisaged. Nothing in this ever went according to plan. Had things been different, Minato would have still been alive. He would be Hokage and maybe she would still be miserable or just running the hospital. He did have a good future. But that ended. Misery to his son and a great legacy. This village celebrated him as its greatest Hokage, yet it had scorned his very son. The only child he left in this world. That hadn't been the plan. The plan had been to make Naruto a hero, but the villagers had turned him into a villain. Tsunade shook her head. This wasn't something she wanted to be thinking about. The most important thing was that they had an Uzushio Gakure problem. And this was something that could turn the peace they were currently enjoying into a memory. There was a threat, but Tsunade wanted to believe that it wasn't to Konohagakure. If it was to Konoha, they would have to fight to protect this village, their home. She did wonder though, what would Naruto do if Uzu turned out to be the enemy? Would he fight his clansmen? Would he side with Konoha? It was a situation she didn't want to see, but it all depended on Uzu's actions. What the hell is keeping that damn cripple? The god I'm Hokage demanded from Shizune. I don't know, Shizune said with a shake of her head. Should I go search for him? A more fitting way would be to send Anbu to drag him. Tsunade amused herself with the thought. He would certainly not be happy with that action. She wouldn't even be surprised if he marks the Anbu who manhandled him for death in the near future. There was no need to go that far nevertheless. The War Hawk walked into her office, with a pale teen by his side. The god I'm glanced at the teenage boy for a moment before looking back at Danzo. He had sent the list of his operatives to her. She had studied the list but hadn't done anything about it or even commented regarding it. He delivered something she could touch. He'd passed the first test. What do you know about Uzushio Gakure? Tsunade asked before Danzo could say anything. That damned village. If Danzo really wished, or if he was the Hokage, he would have already sent people there to determine its motives, strength. If it was dangerous, he wouldn't be against its elimination. If it could be used, he would send shinobi for a takeover mission. But he wasn't the Hokage. This naive woman was the one who was making the decisions. Well, there was also the little problem that he couldn't get information out of Uzushio Gakure. The people he'd sent had been refused entry. They couldn't even get on boats in the first place. If they got in, they would be turned back at the gates. The village truly had ways to keep people out. He wasn't doing everything he could nevertheless. He'd avoided killing people because he didn't want to attract any attention. If you are referring to the current Uzu, then not much. I do know however that they mostly depend on the wave for their supplies. Anything that can't be made in the island, they get them from the wave. I do suspect that they either control the country or have a rather strong relationship with them. What do you mean by that? Tsunade asked. The wave country still sends its mission requests to us. And nothing has changed in the way it does things. Yes. Nothing has changed because they don't want to attract attention. Tsunade looked thoughtful for a moment. She hadn't thought of investigating the wave because it wasn't the problem. But at this point, it was the only nation that had a relationship with the whirlpools. If this was true, then they would have had some information. Unless. Why don't you know something? If Uzu depends on the wave, then obviously it will look at the nation as an asset. Most likely someone from Uzu is within the nation. Danzo shook his head. The wave has grown over the past couple of years. Someone was behind it. It does seem that the people there credit Uzu for the changes. He explained lightly. But it isn't something they openly talk about, and none of the masses have had contact with someone from Uzu. However, the man who acts as daimyo frequently visits Uzu. He goes alone. And he can't talk. Can't or won't? Can't. Danzo was frowning in the inside. They used a method he would use, but even if you threatened to kill of the man's family, he couldn't talk. So you have tried something in the wave, but there is nothing much, Tsunade said. Back to Uzu it is then. What are you planning? I'm sure you already know what they did to Iwa's spies. Danzo nodded. I'm surprised that they were even able to tell they were spies from Iwa. Unlike shinobi, spies do not wear their allegiance for all to see. The only way to know is through interrogation. A spy never reveals his identity, much less his home. And if they didn't reveal it by choice? It means we cannot underestimate Uzu. Tsunade nodded. I have sent Jiraiya to Iwagakure to discover what Aniki is planning to do about this. But I want you to do what you can to find as much information as you can about Uzu before we make a move. Danzo nodded. What of the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki? Naruto, Tsunade said sternly. It is Naruto. Danzo stared at the slug princess for about a minute before finally speaking. Naruto. Danzo was forced to say. He is finishing his training trip and will return within 2 to 3 months, Tsunade said. That is all I am saying to you. You should have no interest in him. He is my shinobi and my problem, if he is a problem. It becomes more than your problem when he can threaten the very security of this village, Danzo stated in a calm tone. You should now know already that there is nothing much about his childhood in our records because Hiruzen made sure all records were destroyed. I will tell you something you don't know. There is also a suspicious moment where Hiruzen took Naruto out of the village for about 2 weeks. He said he was taking the boy to train in secret. I tried to tail them but I lost track of them. He would not say what the training was about, nor did Naruto show in any changes in his skills. But if the boy isn't a Fuinjutsu master, I don't know anything. What do you mean by that? Hiruzen stonewalled all my attempts to get closer to Naruto and made sure that I wasn't able to observe him, Danzo said. However, I did observe Hiruzen himself. He visited Naruto almost every day in his apartment. Even if he would only stay for a couple of moments, he would go there. He collected Fuinjutsu scrolls and possibly handed them over to Naruto. And that was before he even joined the academy. Tsunade frowned. Jiraiya has never said anything about Naruto's Fuinjutsu skills. A Jinchuriki who knows the art of sealing wasn't something that would please anyone. I see, Tsunade said. And him? For Naruto's observation when he comes back. I would have suggested he joins them, but you are not going to agree to this. And what makes you think I will even agree to this? Team 7 is still short of one member. You don't have anyone suitable to put in the team. I will think about it, Tsunade said. I expect results soon, Danzo, she said, dismissing the man with a wave of her right hand. Once he was out of the office, Shizune spoke. Well, that was surprising. The third really did keep many things about Naruto to himself. It was almost as if he didn't want anyone to find out, Tsunade said with a shake of her head. But Jiraiya has been with him for these years and he still hasn't done anything to raise anyone's suspicions. It does make it a little hard to believe that there could be something we don't know, Shizune said. Iwagakure. Halt. Jiraiya frowned deeply at being stopped by the guards at the village gates. He really didn't like going through this check. It was annoying. He was the legendary Toad Sage, and he had a pass to go everywhere he chooses. This kind of thing was the reason he often chose to sneak into villages. The rakeage hadn't been amused in his last attempt. But he had managed to laugh it off without setting the man off. He'd nevertheless been given days within the village and was told that he would be watched. Jiraiya. The Toad Sage said to the guards. This is my apprentice and we have come here to see the Sandaime Tsuchikage. Jiraiya-sama. One of the guards said. He then turned to face Naruto, his eyes sharpened slightly. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto merely nodded with disinterest. He just looked away from the man and turned his attention into the atmosphere around the village. It was different from Suna. The wind had a different vibe to it. Within Kumo, there was a bit of static within the air and it had made him uncomfortable. Seeing that the guard looked a bit ticked off by Naruto's response, Jiraiya quickly responded. Don't mind him, he said with a smile, before taking back his papers. We will find the way ourselves. Tsuchikage-sama is waiting for you, we will quickly take you there. Jiraiya shook his head. I want to walk. No, we insist that you allow us to take you there, Jiraiya-sama. I also insist, Jiraiya said in an even tone. The man stared for a couple of moments before relenting. He could not force a Sannin into anything. Fine. But we will escort you. Jiraiya smiled. I can live with that. The man talking to them led the way while his partner remained behind. Naruto and Jiraiya walked through in a slow pace. There was no hurry. Jiraiya was probably checking places he could stop by once they were done with their business. You do realize that when these people see blonde hair, blue eyes, and a Konoha headband, they think of the Yondaime Hokage, Naruto said to Jiraiya, seeing the curious looks they were getting. The Sannin wasn't an unknown man either. Jiraiya shrugged his shoulders. It is bound to happen sooner or later, he said. Besides, this will be a good test. There is no need for a test, Naruto said. There is no contempt. Perhaps only from those who lost their loved ones in the war. It would be like with the Kyuubi rampage. Jiraiya frowned deeply. He was getting it now. Naruto really didn't have a problem talking about his childhood days and what Konoha did to him. Worse, he didn't mix his words and even spoke with some indifference. It bothered Jiraiya, but he could not tell Naruto to cry when he speaks about his miserable past. Perhaps it was good that he wasn't afraid to talk about. What was missing was emotions. Maybe, Jiraiya said. But it is good to know. We know where we stand and should be able to tell if there are enemies we should look out for. You are not wrong, Naruto said before falling silent. Jiraiya said nothing either as they were led into the Tsuchikage tower. Upon arrival, he stared at Naruto. Respond politely as they ask you a question about Uzu or Minato. We don't want to go back to war with Iwa. Do I look stupid to you? Naruto asked the Sannin. Jiraiya blinked once before shaking his head. I will accuse of many things, including being disrespectful to your sensei, but you are not stupid. Good, Naruto said as they entered Anaki's office. The Sandaime Tsuchikage didn't offer both Naruto and Jiraiya any smile as they appeared before him. He had only even accepted this because he thought he could get some information regarding Uzushio Gakure. His stern eyes glanced at the blonde. What caught his attention was the Uzumaki clan symbol. He nearly glared. But he was sure he would still be able to recognize the symbol even if he was blind. The Uzumaki represented a problem. But it wasn't one that gave him nightmares. He could solve this one. He just had to move carefully. This is rather bold of you bringing an Uzumaki here when they are proving to be a problem, Anaki said, facing Jiraiya. The Toad Sage shrugged a bit carelessly. Naruto is my student and a leaf shinobi. He has no connections to Uzu. But he is Uzumaki. I didn't deny that, Jiraiya said in a hardened tone. Naruto isn't the reason I came here. But his clan is. Anaki interjected before the Sannin could finish. Yes. Jiraiya eyed Naruto. The blonde looked indifferent as always. He was a little thankful for it this time around. We know what they did to your spies. Everyone seems to know, Anaki said. He glanced at Naruto once more, that look was pissing him off. But why was an Uzumaki still running around the elemental nations while his clan was rebuilding? If he had been his shinobi, Anaki wouldn't trust him. Everything would just be suspicious, especially if he was going to walk with the symbol of the clan proudly drawn on his chest. Before its destruction, Konoha was allied to Uzu. Do you have contact with the nation? Jiraiya shook his head. We are in the dark about it as everyone else is. We don't know what is happening in the village. You have Uzumaki with you. You could send him to find out. Anaki suggested. You wouldn't have a problem with it, would you? It would be dangerous as we don't know anything. Jiraiya responded. Naruto is a little too important for Konoha to lose. If you don't have anything and are not willing to use an asset you have to find out something, why are you even here, Jiraiya? The Leaf is interested in two things, what you plan to do about Uzu and your connections with the Akatsuki. I plan to determine if Uzu is a threat. If so, it will be destroyed. As for my relationship with the Akatsuki, it is not your business to know. Jiraiya frowned. He should have known that Anaki would say something like that about Uzu. It was dangerous and would cause unnecessary tensions within the elemental nations. Konoha was still technically allied to Uzu. If Iwa was going to do something without being provoked, Konoha might be forced to step in. They did nothing while Uzu was being destroyed the first time, they could not sit back the second time. What would the villages who depend on the Leaf for protection even say? Konoha would lose friends. But if they tried to stop Iwa, it would be war, and that was something they were looking to avoid. What do you have to say about that, Uzumaki? Anaki asked Naruto. The blonde shrugged. Nothing, really, he said with indifference. Oh? I thought you'd say you would fight for your clan, Anaki said. He would have marked the blonde as someone who must be killed if it had come to that. Tsuchikage-sama, I want a kati. The doors burst open at that moment as Kurotsuchi stalked into the room and stared at Naruto. She grabbed him and twisted him around. You bastard. Naruto smiled. It is good to see you too, Kurotsuchi. She glared and dragged Naruto out of the office. Anaki sat speechless for a moment. Do they know each other? I think they met a couple of months ago. Anaki was silent for a moment. I hope nothing is happening there, Jiraiya, he said in dangerous tone. The Toad Sage acted as if he was oblivious to the danger. If the young ones find love, it is up to us to guide them in their love rather than stand in their way. I hope you heard me, Jiraiya. I am not losing my granddaughter to Konoha. You have little faith in her. You think she'd be willing to leave Iwa for love? Jiraiya asked. Let us get back to the subject at hand, Tsuchikage-sama. The Sannin gave the old man a stern look. He would not allow Anaki to dismiss him like that when he had clear intentions of destroying another village. This just made him think about what Naruto had said when they were talking about the issue. Iwagakure was going to do the wrong thing, and more to that, this was war. This world didn't need another war. The Uzumaki didn't deserve it. Not after what was done to them in the past. Looking at things, Jiraiya didn't think that Uzushio would have the might to face off against any of the great nations. Iwagakure perhaps by quantity had the largest military power. They had even outnumbered the Hidden Leaf in the past war. Then again, Konoha had been fighting in all wars around that time. The Leaf never missed out on a war. Never. Anaki looked towards the door for a moment before facing Jiraiya. I really don't know what you want to talk about, Jiraiya. If you have nothing to give. I have nothing further to discuss with you. You have indeed said that, but I am concerned about the state of affairs in the elemental nations. That aside, do you really think that Uzu would have the power to invade Iwagakure? Jiraiya asked. Anaki shook his head. They do not. They never did. Despite their power, they never had the power to threaten any village with invasion, but that is beside the point. That Tsuchikage said. If Uzushio seeks revenge, even though it doesn't have the power to attack us, we will do something about it. And if it remains locked down? We will need to see what is happening in there. What do you know? Maybe they are busy building up a military strength. Or maybe they just want to keep out people who only have bad intentions against them and think they have the right to decide who lives and who dies simply because they think of them as a threat, Jiraiya said in a stern tone. Anaki's eyes sharpened. Watch what you say, Jiraiya-san. The Toad Sage shook his head. I am just telling it like it is. Don't forget that Konoha is still technically allied to Uzushio Gakure. If they ask for our help, we would have to respond to their request. Didn't you say you have no relationship with the current Uzu? Jiraiya nodded. But we are making arrangements to meet the leader of Uzushio Gakure to determine where they stand. If we determine that they are a lost generation, we will do something, but if they have no intention of invading any other nation, we can't stand to watch someone attack them. So you are saying that Konoha would be willing to fight, Iwagakure? Anaki laughed. In the last war, we outnumbered you. It took the efforts the Yondaime Hokage to end the war. Years ago, you suffered greatly in the Kyubi rampage. You have lost the Sandaime Hokage, Yondaime, and the likes of Orochimaru since we last fought. Do you think that you can stand in our way? Jiraiya stared at the old man. Regardless of how you look at it, that was a not-so-subtle threat. What are you saying? If we determine that Uzushio is a threat, we will destroy it and anyone who gets in the way, Anaki said in a firm tone. The current leaf doesn't threaten me. I see, Jiraiya said. I really do want you to consider things carefully. An unnecessary war will cause needless bloodshed. You should know better than anyone that war causes pain on both sides. Even if you win, you will lose something. I don't need a lecture about war from you, Anaki said with a shrug of his shoulders. Meanwhile, once out of the office, Kurotsuchi dragged Naruto atop of the Tsuchikage tower. She didn't want to be seen with him in the streets, lest people start rumors about it. Civilians had a thing about gossiping and so did shinobi. It wasn't that she paid attention to it. Sometimes you just could not ignore it because people were always around talking behind your back. The black-haired Jonin turned to Naruto with a glare on her eyes. She really wanted to pounce on him and beat the crap out of him for doing what he did and then disappear just like that without even saying a word to her. She had searched through the town, looking for him, but there was no sign of him. She had come to realize that he had disappeared from town with his sensei. Bastard. She had been afraid when she woke up in the morning. Had something happened to her? Had he not touched her? Relief had washes over her like a tonic when she had come to realize the thought she was still intact. There had been nothing out of place. It had been strange, for someone who had been acting like a pervert, why didn't he? It wasn't that she wanted him to do anything. Getting drunk hadn't even been part of the plan. She was never going to drink again. Not like that. You disappeared without saying a word. I am here now, Naruto said with a small shrug. It would have been painful if I had taken advantage of you after getting you drunk. But I don't swing that way. Despite everything, I have some moral integrity. Kurotsuchi snorted. What do morals have to do with being shinobi? Naruto eyed the woman. Shinobi are still people. You are a kunoichi. It doesn't mean you must lose all sense of right and wrong because of that. You sound like an idealist, Kurotsuchi said with a shake of her head. But you got me drunk. I did, Naruto said with a smile. But that had been because you thought you could get me drunk and get information out of me. Admittedly, if you had done that and worked on your seduction skills, I might have spilled. I do have that weakness, he said in thought. I don't have any seduction skills. I was certain all experienced jonins who sometimes work undercover are taught those skills. Then again, you are not that type, Naruto said. You shouldn't have been too confident in your ability to lie. I didn't know you were that good even after drinking so much, Kurotsuchi said. It did sound like you knew about me. Then again, I should have known it when you called me by name. It happens, Naruto said before turning to look at Kurotsuchi in her eyes. It seemed like you didn't tell your grandfather about our encounter. I couldn't tell him. It is embarrassing. Naruto laughed. I hope my sensei doesn't mention it by mistake, he said with a smile. The old man wouldn't think twice before he puts me on a leash for a couple of more years, Kurotsuchi said. With how things are, I shouldn't even be talking to you. It might cause some problems. Then why are you talking to me? I couldn't just ignore you after our last encounter. Naruto shrugged. It's not like we shared a bed the whole night and then I decided to make a run for it in the morning, he said easily enough. Think of this as a chance to get close to the enemy. Kurotsuchi narrowed her eyes. She looked ready to battle him there and there. Are you an enemy? What if I am? I'd kill you now. All of Iwa's enemies must be dealt with. With those terms, even if I was an enemy, I wouldn't tell you. If it wasn't because you are a leaf shinobi, I'd use other means to get you to talk. Although you are still ranked as a Jinan, your relationship with a Sannin is troublesome. If you were ordinary, I wouldn't care. Spoken like a villain. This was something Naruto was seeing that would become a bit of a problem. This woman was willing to do anything to secure her village's interests. It was no longer just about security but anything that could benefit Iwagakure. If stabbing a friend in the back had to be done for Iwa to gain new business that would help, she was probably willing to do it. If this woman couldn't change her thinking, Naruto was to watch his back with 4 eyes and have someone watch him as well. The good thing about dealing with people you knew had this mindset was that you always expected it. There was no need to feign surprise or shock when they try to stab you. You wouldn't even have a problem cut them up because you never trusted them to begin with. The woman shrugged. I am Kunoichi of Iwagakure. It is my duty to protect it. I wouldn't be doing any service if I allowed a known threat to walk free. Naruto shook his head slightly. Overzealous. He muttered. But for now, you are not grabbing me by the throat because you don't want to be the one to start a war with Konoha. She nodded. But I thought you were going to become my friend, getting to know me better so that you can see if I am an enemy you need to kill or a friend you must keep, Naruto said. Kurotsuchi was silent for a couple of moments before responding. I hadn't been thinking about it. I didn't think you were serious. You could have been lying even. You really can't trust what a shinobi says. You can't trust a kunoichi either, he said. You continuously lied with a straight face. I was honest with you and even treated you well after you got drunk. Don't try to make me feel bad for you. I'm just stating the obvious. Naruto responded calmly. It is up to you to decide how you take that. But hopefully, you take my offer and decide to be a little honest. Until then. Naruto turned away to leave. Kurotsuchi grabbed him, to stop him from leaving. Wait, she said. She cursed herself for sounding a little desperate when she spoke that word. She quickly shook off the look on her face and stared into the back of the blonde. She would not show any weakness. Naruto looked into the heavens with a smile. Kirigakure. The hidden mist, his former home, a land that was once blessed with so many bloodlines. Yet, the normal people saw them as curses. They saw them as stains that needed to be removed from the world. They had been driven away and the village plagued into a civil war. Kiri would certainly be a very powerful nation if it wasn't because of its bloody past, a past that Haku had somehow managed to escape from with the help of his former master. Haku really did miss the man. He had died being useful. But he was alive again. Someone had been sacrificed for him to return to life. And he had been shown his master's actions upon being shouted at by Naruto. Oh, what a good person Naruto had been, on the outside it seemed. Deep inside, there had been a mystery. But not everyone seemed to be aware of it. This was his second chance to live, to do things differently, to make something out of his life. But he had another master, the Emperor, the person who gave him this second life. You really look like you were lost in thought, Guran said to Haku. They were being escorted towards the Mizukage's tower by 2 shinobi and along the way, the ice user hadn't said a damn thing. Haku glanced at Guran with a smile. I was just thinking about the past. Past? Guran frowned at the thought. Her past was with Orochimaru. That sadistic bastard. She smiled bitterly at the thought. Wasn't she like him in that regard? In any case, she had ended up leaving. She had escaped him. Yukimaru was the reason. Perhaps it was the guilt, a ridiculous feeling. Guran had never thought she would be able to experience it. But she had grown attached and her master had gleefully said he knew it would happen. She was no longer needed there. He had found a new host who was admittedly better than her. Yours was a roller coaster, Haku said of Guran's past. I don't know much about yours. We have different positions. But once we are done, we will work closely together. You'll learn a couple of things, Haku said. I am going to be removed from my post? Guran was a bit alarmed by this. She loved her current job regardless of how tiring it was. There was danger, but being a kunoichi was danger to begin with. Not necessarily, but you won't take on as much responsibilities as you do now, Haku said. They are still busy fixing up everything on their part. And some people are still busy with training. Once that is done, they take over. And what are going to do? Work closely with His Majesty, Haku said. We'll also be his guards when he travels outside of Uzushio. What of those 2? Oh, those 2. Their job isn't to protect His Majesty, but they have other roles, Haku said. I actually come from this village. But I left when I was younger. It was a long time ago. Is that one of the reasons you were sent? Likely, Haku said with a nod. I'm going to be the representative and you will be my guard. Don't forget that you still have that mission. It's going to be difficult when we are being watched like this, Guran said with a frown. And we have to leave before the day ends. Well, we can't afford to be away from Uzushio for a long time, Haku said. We'll find a way to make things work. We can't go back home without any result. Guran really hoped that failure wasn't treated with death. She hated that kind of principle. But she had been told that she wasn't to punish anyone for failing to do their jobs. It was part of the job and no one had to die for failing. They just had to learn from their failure, but if they continued to fail, they would be removed and shown to another department. Hopefully, Guran said. Failure doesn't click well with my language, she said as they arrived at the door of the Mizukage's office. She wasn't used to this kind of thing. Well, at least Haku would be talking. Guran didn't do diplomacy. She used force to get what she wanted. Mei looked up from behind her desk as the two people from the hidden whirlpools entered her office. She was certainly curious about how they would handle things. That aside, this was the first time she was dealing with anyone from the nation since its revival. She also knew that the nation didn't send its people outside to handle issues. The wave country always handled things, but the nation never admitted it was on behalf of Uzushio. However, from where she stood, Mei could tell that Uzu lived off the wave. She didn't bother standing up to greet the two, but she did smile. Her smile became a little sly when she caught the eyes of the handsome young man walking beside the purple-haired kunoichi. She could tell, though, they were both capable shinobi. Haku smiled and greeted the woman. Hello, Mizukage-sama, he said quietly. Haku Yuki. Representative of the Emperor of Uzushio Gakure. He pointed at Guran. This is my comrade, Guran. She is acting as my guard. Hold on, Mei said with a stare. Did you just say Yuki? Are you from the Yuki clan? Haku nodded with a smile. Yes. I was born in this village, but after my clan was killed, I was forced to flee. Admittedly, I almost died, but I was saved. Who would have thought that a member of the Yuki clan would still be alive at this time? And not to mention now, wearing a headband with the symbol of the Uzumaki clan. Disturbing, but this was due to their past, a past where bloodline wielders were not celebrated but hated as people hate Jinchurikis. Mei thought it had been nothing more than jealousy. Either way, she now had someone from her village allied with another nation, and he was just willing to admit it like that. That was perhaps the most disturbing part. They had no records of him, so he was probably just a civilian by the time he left the village. She frowned at the thought, if only she had found him first. I see, Mei said. You don't mind if we talk alone, do you? Haku asked. He was thinking that Guran would need to go out of the office and have a look about. He didn't want to stay any longer than he had to after speaking with the Mizukage. Mei thought about it for a moment before shaking her head. No, she said. I'll be taking a walk around the village, Guran said. If possible, I'd like to have someone show me around. The guard will show you around, Mei said. She watched Guran leave the office, leaving her with just the handsome Haku. She allowed him to sit down. Thank you, Haku said. I'm surprised that the Emperor didn't decide to come here himself. It is even more surprising that you are willing to come here yourselves. The wave has always been the nation we negotiate with, Mei said. She did not forget the history between the two nations. It was a troublesome history and one that didn't make her happy. Had she been the one in charge, she wouldn't have threatened Uzushio Gakure, she wouldn't have done anything against the nation. But her past leaders took part in the destruction by providing ships. They didn't have a problem since Uzu wasn't much of a problem to them. The nation hasn't made its intentions known. Perhaps that was why Iwagakure has sent her a message to inquire if they had made any contact with her. It was likely that the Hidden Stone was plotting destruction if Uzu proved to be an enemy. Mei didn't want to think it was the case. She didn't want to think that Uzu was out for revenge. The Land of Water's recent actions have been troubling. They do threaten Uzushio Gakure, that is why we decided to come here. We are also thinking that perhaps some actions are being motivated by our existence. Mei shook her head. I don't know what the daimyo is thinking. We don't get along that well. We are trying. I think this has to do survival than anything sinister. The wave country is growing, at a faster rate than anyone would have thought. It is taking some of the Land of Water's economic interests. For our own survival, we have to take measures to ensure that our own futures are secure. Haku smiled. He seemed relieved more than anything. I'm glad. Mei tilted her head to the side with a raised eyebrow. Glad? Haku nodded. I am glad that it is something that can be resolved in simple matters, he said lightly. The wave and the land of water don't have any deals, but you do trade. I understand you are saying that you don't know what the daimyo is thinking, but you don't have any bad intentions towards the wave and Uzu, yes? Mei nodded her head. And if I had bad intentions? It would have made things a bit complicated, Haku said with a shake of his head. I do have a question, do you always do what the daimyo wants you to do? I cannot answer that question. Haku nodded. I understand, he said. Never minding what the feudal lord is doing, we want to form a trade deal with Kirigakure. It will be of mutual benefit to ensure that none of us suffer. We are in competition, and we are a bit of a small nation, we'd rather not get involved in disputes. We would rather we just form an agreement. Mei stared at Haku for a long minute. He was asking her to do things the lord of this country wasn't doing. It would be like going against the feudal lord. He had asked her the question about whether they always did the man wanted for this reason. He was young, but obviously capable. What kind of trade deal are we talking about? It was an agreement in which we play by certain rules. Competition is good when it is played fairly. This agreement can help us create an environment that allows us to rule over the seas in a peaceful manner. You have your territory, we have our territory. If we want to come to your territory, we have to pay fees, per our agreement. If someone wants to buy something, we can sell it to you for a good price and you sell it to your customer. We don't want a situation where we are stealing your customers and you are stealing ours. That is a broad suggestion that will require time to iron out things, Mei said in thought. If you break the agreement? You have the military might to do what you think is right. Haku responded calmly. And if we break it? We have our methods, Haku said with a smile. We can discuss the broad terms and what it shall entail. The wave will conclude things. Mei shook her head. I'm not signing anything with the wave. I am talking to Uzu, now, am I not? Then my agreement isn't with the wave but with Uzu. Haku looked thoughtful for a moment. He could see what she was trying to do, a relationship between the two nations would be formed because of such an agreement. But the decision was not for us to make. I will have to consult with the people back at home to see what they have to say. You have to understand that as things stand, we have no formal connections with any hidden village. To break away from that, changes everything for us. And only the Emperor can make that decision. I understand, but that is the only way you are getting an agreement with me. Haku nodded. Are you still willing to discuss the broad terms? Yes, but I am still not agreeing on anything. Earth Country. Jiraiya was stalking out of Iwa with giant footsteps. He looked like he had one unpleasant meeting with the Lord of Terror or he had just been told to cut off his ties by his beloved mistress. They stepped out of Iwa and the man didn't say anything until they could no longer see the hidden stone. I really need to find a town and just sit back with alcohol beside me. The Sannin grumbled in a stern tone. Now, sensei. You really don't want alcohol to be the tonic to your problems, Naruto said. Jiraiya glared at Naruto. Then snorted. Says the brat who consumes alcohol like it is water. Worse, you drink alone while sitting in a dark little corner. I don't do it to forget about problems, Naruto said. Jiraiya shrugged. The fact is you drink. You should not be telling me to stop. He eyed the blonde. And I doubt your reason is truthful. Ah. Naruto looked shocked. You now doubt my word, sensei? We really need to sit together for a soul-searching mission to ensure that we get this mistrust out of the way. You'll probably be shrugging all the way. Naruto thought about it for a moment before nodding his head. You are probably right, he said. I guess things didn't go well. Not as bad but it could be, Jiraiya said in a serious tone. How bad? I knew Aniki was a stubborn old man but I didn't think he was this stubborn. He wouldn't listen to a word I say. It was difficult getting a message across that thick head of his. You should have seen him, Naruto. If I hadn't been firm, you would have to worry about your clan. He says if he determines that Uzushio Gakure is a threat, he is going to destroy it. He wouldn't listen and he really has a narrow definition of what a threat is. Naruto looked thoughtful for a moment before shaking his head. People can disappoint you sometimes, sensei. You cannot always predict their movements. They are troublesome. Yeah, Jiraiya agreed. He is willing to wage war against Konoha if it defends Uzu. He even brought up the last war, a war isn't what I want. But Iwagakure seems more than willing to drag us into war. A war against Iwagakure? It was going to be another bloody massacre. People would die. Lives would be lost over the quest to destroy Uzu. Simple-minded fools. Naruto couldn't understand the mentality behind that reasoning. He would never comprehend it. It was nothing more than a perverted thirst for destruction. Konoha could not afford to go to with Iwagakure. The leaf was powerful, but an all-out war with the hidden stone would leave it massively weakened. It wouldn't be any surprise if any other village decides to take advantage of the situation. Iwa has been rebuilding since the last war and it had 2 fully experienced Jinchurikis. That is indeed a troublesome situation, Naruto said with a nod. Tsunade will certainly be left fuming over this attitude. Jiraiya nodded. But at least I managed to get him to chill until Konoha has tried to develop some contact with Uzu. It will still be difficult to tell if he will keep his word. Shinobi are liars after all, Naruto said. Agreement signed can always be torn apart. The very thing that is wrong with our world, Jiraiya said. I wonder when it will change, Naruto. People do whatever they want without suffering any consequences. It was a free world. The strong ruled. The weak simply had to look away to avoid destruction. Sometimes even they have yet to do anything, their lands are used as battlefields. In that time, innocent people die. Shinobi rape and take food from innocent civilians. It was war. Anything could happen. Just making it out alive was all that mattered. It didn't matter if you lost all of emotions and moral integrity. Naruto shook his head. He wasn't the one who to speak about emotions. Perhaps I might join you for that drink, sensei. And we can talk about this. Jiraiya grunted. How did things go at your side? Not bad, but that woman is willing to stab friends in the back for the sake of pushing forward the Iwa agenda, Naruto said with a shake of his head. However, the human emotion is something curious. Because of emotional attachment, there are some things that you really cannot do. And even if you try to do, you hesitate. That moment can save a life. And is it all that you are looking for? It is easy to come to an agreement over something with someone you are emotionally attached to. Especially if it is a case of war and you both want to survive. Jiraiya couldn't fault Naruto's words. It was perhaps something he could very well agree on, that was kind of thing that could even help them avoiding a war. Is that the same attitude you take with Temari? Naruto shook his head. Temari is an honest person who wouldn't stab a friend in the back. To be quite honest, I did enjoy my time around her. The blonde admitted in a calm tone. That was a reality that he had to face. Although he didn't want to get too attached because of his own associations, Naruto did realize that he couldn't deny himself an opportunity to be a friend to someone. He was a friend to her brother but not to her, was he? Naruto shook his head. He would see what happens the next time he does see her. Jiraiya smiled. You know, it isn't wrong to fall in love sometimes, the Sannin said. You're still young. You can love, get married and have children. I certainly wouldn't want you closer to my children. I'm certain if I have a daughter, you'd already be measuring just how much of a beauty she would be in the near future, Naruto said with a pointed look. You really wound me, Naruto, Jiraiya said with a hurt look on his face. Have you no faith in your sensei? Naruto shrugged. When you start acting like you can be trusted, maybe I will have some faith you, he said. You are talking about me, what of you, sensei? You can still love. Is your heart so wrapped up around Tsunade's chest that you cannot look elsewhere? Jiraiya frowned. It isn't her, he said. Regrets. What a miserable man you are, sensei, Naruto said with a shake of his head. He then smiled. Well, we are both miserable people, for different reasons. Perhaps this is why we are able to get along. A sadist will surely find comfort in the presence of another sadist. In the sea. The ship was heading out of the land of water, going back Uzu. Haku was standing by the deck, watching the waters with an expressionless mask on his face. He had seen his former home. The memories had been unpleasant, but that was the place he had been born. It looked so peaceful. He really wished he'd been born in this age. Perhaps he would have experienced a better childhood. Better memories. He did wonder though, would Uzushio end up fighting Kiri over the past? Haku hoped not. Kiri was peaceful now. It had already seen too much bloodshed. And the Mizukage seemed like a good person. No, she was a good person. Haku was certain that the emperor would like her. But when would they meet? You're gonna end up falling over the sea, Guran said as she walked over to Haku. Did things not go well? It took a couple of moments before Haku could respond to Guran. It went well. He glanced at the purple-haired woman before looking at the water below. Just how deep was the water? If you fell, you'd suddenly be crushed by the pressure of water. Then why do you look so gloomy? Thinking of being shinobi of the hidden mist? Haku shook his head. Death will separate me from my master, he said. Just thinking about things. You know, if we are going to get anything done, Uzushio itself will have to sign the agreements. I understand the village wants to keep its doors closed. Guran started. Is it the past? There is that, but what do you think when we open our doors to Kiri? Guran thought about it for a couple of moments before frowning. She worked with security, she should know. It increases the chances of spies getting into our nation. Guran almost laughed. She's just called Uzuar. Ridiculous. When did she start taking Uzushio as her home? Well, she wasn't complaining about anything. She was actually having fun being in the nation. That is something we don't want. Not now. Can't we do things without opening the gates? We can, but the Mizukage is insistent on a couple of things. She doesn't have a problem in signing the agreement with us, but there's some terms she wants before she agrees to it, Haku said, shaking his head. How did things go at your end? Nothing much gained, Guran said. I will need to send someone there. To get into it deeper. She wasn't concerned that she didn't get as much as she wanted. She did get something she could work with. What does the Mizukage want anyway? She wants to see His Majesty. I don't think she will get it. Yoshino could pretend to be him and get things signed. Why doesn't the Emperor just meet the Mizukage himself? You must know already that His Majesty isn't always present in Uzushio Gakure. Guran nodded. She had concluded as much. But that just left many questions around him. She still didn't know anything about him. Because nobody knows him, Yoshino could play the role. That foxy man can play any role he wants. Sunagakure. He was Kazekage, but Gaara didn't want to say that he was tired of this job already. But the truth was that things were difficult. No one had said it would be simple. The council didn't matter. But at least they were not standing in his way. He was able to do his job without much interference, but things were still difficult. It was still not easy. He was doing it though. He was steering the ship. He was doing it. Suna was going through the right path. The villagers hadn't warmed up to him, but Gaara wasn't complaining. He had expected things to take time. Gaara glanced at his sister as she walked into the office. She was his help. She spent time with him, helping him do some things he could not because he was busy with another thing. He didn't have a lot of people he could trust around here. So she was going more work than he would like. She seemed more than happy to help nevertheless. It has only been a couple of months and there are people who are possibly planning to kill me, Gaara said in a calm tone. Not long ago, some people had killed off the idea of killing him because it was impossible. Many had tried in the past and they had died. Gaara couldn't boast about it, but it was the truth. They were not going to try to assassinate him this time. It would not work out. They were coming with another plan that could perhaps work. If the opponent was strong enough, he would be killed. Yet, Gaara had cautioned Baki against hanging those people who were plotting this for treason. He didn't want his rule to be marred by bloodshed. He would find a way to deal with this. Well, he just had to survive it. Then again, the people were not really succeeding and he had someone watching them. He did have shinobi who were loyal. People he could trust. Not everyone, but they were there and that pleased him. Tamari frowned at this. Who are they hiring? Trying, Gaara said. They are trying to hire a mercenary group called the Akatsuki. I have been told it is a group of S-ranked criminals. Nothing more about them exists. We will try to gain more information. I have sent a message to Konoha to see if they know anything more about it. What do you mean by trying? I mean they are not winning, Gaara said. It is strange. From what we know of the group, they are prepared to do anything, even if it means destroying a village. They have that power. But for some reason, they are refusing to take this mission. They wouldn't even have to take on Suna as this is planned for when I visit Konohagakure. That is indeed strange, Tamari said in thought. She shook her head. You should still be a little more worried about this, Gaara. What if they end up accepting the mission? It will be problem, but I will try to survive. I don't plan on dying, Gaara said. I suppose I could go to them and give them a sword to kill me if they really want to do it. I will have a couple of words for them. You are not going to do that. Gaara managed a tiny smile. I still have to figure out something before I head to Konoha, he said. Naruto still hasn't gone back, has he? Tamari shook her head. No, she said. That's a pity, Gaara said. I was hoping that we could see him. Chapter 6, The Emperor Dreams and Desires. They were still in the Earth Country and Naruto still found time to follow his obsessive ritual of staring into nothingness while sitting by the window. Jiraiya didn't question it often, but with a few revelations that the blonde has put forward, he worried. Not for the sanity, but what was actually going on in that head of Naruto that his body could just switch off like that. If you wanted to kill him, now was best chance to do. He rarely reacted on first movement. Then again, it could be just an act. Naruto had a certain way of doing things. But for certain, Jiraiya was sure the blonde was alert. You probably couldn't even stab him while he was having wet dreams. The thought made Jiraiya laugh. Naruto and dreams? It looked like something that could never meet. Naruto displayed no ambitions. And even when pressed, he admits to having something but never confirms anything. It was always like playing a guessing game. But Jiraiya had stopped trying to guess Naruto's motives and thoughts long ago. It was a fruitless exercise that wouldn't earn him anything other than a headache. The Toad Sage sat on the bed and glanced down for a moment. He'd left Naruto to do some networking in this village. He wasn't afraid that the blonde would be gone. It was likely for Naruto to look for him than to disappear. In his networking work, he'd received a message from Tsunade. He could simply give it, but he wanted to speak to the blonde first about certain things. Naruto. Jiraiya started, his voice was quiet yet stern. He waited until Naruto glanced at him before speaking once more. What were you thinking about? Is it Fuinjutsu? I will need to know what kind of seals you have in your head. Naruto shook his head. I'm not hooked up on Fuinjutsu sensei, he said. I do think about other things. I'd certainly lose my mind if all I did was to bath my thoughts with complex work of the art of sealing. You did admit to having spent hours thinking about it, Jiraiya said with a shrug. What would be the difference now? I had nothing better to do then. What else could he do when the village he called home loathed him and tried its best to ignore his presence? Now you do? Naruto stared at the Sannin. He gave the man a questioning look, wondering if truly he wanted him to answer the question. Naruto thought the answer was quite clear and apparent, unless Jiraiya was feigning ignorance. But Naruto really had no time to waste. Seeing the look, Jiraiya asked. You could have still answered. The Sannin more or less complained. He felt as if the look is asking if he was stupid or not. Naruto shrugged and looked away. His focus went on to the streets. People were talking. Humans were always saying something. They never stopped. Always something had come out. Sometimes it was just pure nonsense. They didn't always make sense. They didn't always speak the truth. The same tongue that clicks lies is the same tongue that sings the truth when the moment calls for it. I'd rather not indulge in obvious things, sensei, Naruto said before pausing as he thought of what had been on his mind before Jiraiya came. I was thinking about Sunagakure. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow in curiosity. They had indeed visited the village, but Naruto had seemed to like the atmosphere there. He hadn't complained, and yet it felt like he was going to come with some negative thoughts about the village. What of Sunagakure? Konoha has never had a great relationship with other great powers, has it, sensei? According to the Sandaime Hokage, although the first Hokage did everything in his power to form better relationships, nothing fruitful ever happened, Naruto said. Suna has only been Konoha's ally because it depended on us for its survival, and the Leaf basically captured Shukaku for it because it didn't have competent shinobi to do it. Konoha was the one who subdued most Baijuas. Sunagakure has always been power-hungry. It looks fine, but it's a bloodthirsty village that will do anything for power, the Hyuga incident. It even tried to kidnap my mother, just for her special chakra. The blonde glanced towards the Sannin. It is curious, isn't it? Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. What is? How did Sunagakure know about my mother? Jiraiya frowned deeply. He could not answer the question. He could not. He didn't even try thinking deeply about it because it was the past, and bringing it now would just cause problems. I don't know. I would assume so, but you also don't have any interest in finding out. Naruto's voice was indifferent, and he was no longer looking at the Sannin. I don't want to focus on the past, Naruto. What will it change knowing about it? Shouldn't we be focusing on the future? Naruto could not forget the past. He would not. The past was what caused his misery. He did think of the future. In fact, it was because he thought of the future that he thought deeply about the past. We should, Naruto said with a small nod of his head. But it still doesn't take away my curiosity. My mother was brought to Konoha for the sole purpose of becoming a Jinchuriki. She was chosen amongst her people in the Uzumaki for this reason. But it wasn't something that everyone was supposed to know. Only people concerned were supposed to know, and yet, Kumo caught wind of it. Jiraiya frowned. Someone probably told them, or they were just good at gathering intel. These kinds of theories were the reasons he didn't want to think about this. It was just going to bring up conspiracy theories that would lead them to trouble. Always something unanswered when it comes to the Uzumaki, Naruto said with a shake of his head. Well, at least now Kumo seems satisfied with its 2 Jinchurikis. I wouldn't put it past them to attempt to recruit you if they thought they had a chance, Jiraiya said with a sneer. The great nations are always thinking about themselves and what they can do to improve their power. It doesn't matter if they have to topple another village. As long as they think the risk was worth the gain, they will do it. Naruto nodded his head. It is a world where power means everything. Those who get the best services and more mission requests are the strongest. Jiraiya was silent for a couple of moments before asking. What brought this on? Iwagakure. Aniki, that damn stubborn old man. Jiraiya really couldn't understand why he had to view things with the fine margins in which he saw them. The Uzumaki hadn't threatened anyone. He didn't even think that they had the power to threaten any of the great villages. Then again, even before, they hadn't threatened anyone. But Aniki didn't care for those reasons. He did not care. He was unapologetic for his village's actions. There was no way around it though. He just had to try to make sure that Konoha confirmed with Uzushio that all was well. But it might still be not enough with Aniki. There was that possibility, and it was something that made Jiraiya to think deeply about this because he could see the clouds of war looming over them because of this. Aniki is just being stubborn, Jiraiya said. It is hard to believe that he has lived through all wars. The Sannin said. The Sandaime Hokage had been very different. He wasn't like Aniki. He knew the pain of war, but Aniki didn't seem to care. Perhaps it is because he has experienced all those wars that he doesn't have a problem with starting another one, Naruto said lightly. Well, I am sure you will figure a way out, sensei. I thought thinking about this, you'd be thinking of a way out. Naruto shook his head. I was merely thinking about the reasons why people do what they do and Kumo's unchecked hunger for power. What did he expect? Naruto didn't speak much about doing anything that could change things. He was so different from his father. Naruto didn't even speak about how well he would serve the hidden leaf. Jiraiya decided to drop the matter and turn on something else. Princess Koyuki has specifically requested your services, Naruto. Oh. From the land of snow. Jiraiya nodded. Here is one particular thing, she is going to Uzushio. Jiraiya watched Naruto without blinking. He wanted to catch any reaction that might be amiss. But there was none. Not even a slight twitch. It was only silence. My ancestral home, Naruto said in thought. Konoha must be quite happy about this. I get to see Uzu, and all eyes will be watching if I will still go back. No doubt I'll be watched to see if something happens. I can't deny that I am also interested in seeing your reaction at being home. The Sannin said in a firm tone. But I want to admit this will give me a good opportunity to get into the village to try to gather some intel. If you get inside with the princess, you will be able to see the emperor. A truly convenient opportunity for you, isn't? You make it sound like it was planned. Naruto faced with Sannin with a smile. We don't have people with such powers, now do we, sensei? Jiraiya didn't like Naruto's smile. There was a bit of mysteriousness about it. It was nothing dark, just the unanswered questions about it that bothered him. She is going to arrive at the port in the frost. 3 days from today. Snow. Cold, Naruto said. But what can you do when you have been requested by a princess? And this one is a real princess, pervert sensei. Jiraiya knew who Naruto was referring to, but he merely shrugged. You must have made a good impression for her to specifically request you personally as her guard. But of course, since I am your sensei, I have to follow. I would be more than happy if they turn you back, Naruto said, eyeing the Sannin at the corner of his eyes. You know, they must know who you are, and allowing you to go inside would prove to be a dangerous task. There is that possibility, but I am going to be part of Princess Koyuki's security. They can't turn me away, Jiraiya said with confidence. Naruto shook his head. Only if Koyuki refuses to abide by the demand to stop you from entering the village. Jiraiya frowned. That would be problematic. This was his chance to gain something on Uzushio and be able to tell something to Aniki that will perhaps ease his foot on the war gas. He had hopes. He wasn't sure what he'd find in the village would please him. But he still had to find a way inside. Koyuki's mission was convenient. Perhaps there was nothing convenient about it, as Naruto seemed to suggest. Either way, she had requested Naruto. The team would be him and Naruto. You just have to make sure it doesn't come to that? Me? Naruto asked. But I don't control anything. Like you, I will be just another hired muscle. She requested you, you must have a way with her. The Sannin then grinned. If you are planning anything, you have to let me in. She is not only famous, but she is a beautiful woman. If you want something from her, go get it yourself, Naruto said. I ain't helping you with madness. Don't be like that, Naruto. Jiraiya whined. I know you like older women. But still. Naruto spoke before the Sannin could finish speaking. That isn't something I ever admitted. I don't have a preference. As long as we are able to get along and the person is a woman, not a child, I don't have complaints. Jiraiya brushed those words aside. Will you make sure she stands by me? It is important that I get information on Uzushio before Anaki decides to do anything. We were already talking about how power-hungry Kumagakure can be, we don't know how they might react to this. You couldn't get anything out of the rakeage? Jiraiya frowned deeply while shaking his head. No, he said. He wouldn't even discuss the matter with me. Dismissed anything I said. Strong man. Naruto muttered. They probably think they don't need anyone and can handle everything by themselves. I don't know if it is just arrogance or confidence. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Are you going with me? Frost? Jiraiya shook his head. We will meet in the wave country. I trust you'll be able to protect the princess along the way. She is a civilian. She'll be traveling with a carriage. You want me to carry the carriage all the way to the wave country? Jiraiya shrugged. You can use your clones. I don't have eternal chakra, you know, Naruto said. Jiraiya snorted. Yeah, right, he said sarcastically. Naruto, you can create thousands of cage bunshines without breaking a sweat. Even I can't do that. In his fight against Orochimaru, the old man couldn't even use more than 5 clones without depleting his reserves. You could even make hundreds of cage bunshines and fill them with chakra reserves of a normal jonin. And yet still be able to fight without feeling its effects. You. The Sannin stared, pointing a finger towards the blonde, don't get to complain about chakra. When you say it like that, it does sound like am I a truly blessed shinobi, doesn't it? Naruto asked the sage with a smile. A little jealous? When you become stronger than me. Naruto smiled. Is it any longer a question of when, Jiraiya-sensei? The blonde asked calmly. Shinobi of this generation are not strong as your generation, isn't it? They didn't even have to go as far as Jiraiya, but during the days of the Shodai Hokage. There was him, Madara and Tobirama. But now, who did they have? Perhaps someone like Guy if he uses all the 8 gates, but that was just death. The past generations lived in times of war. They had to be strong in order to not only survive but to protect their villages, Jiraiya said. These days are peaceful, you're not forced to go to war when you are young. Well, with the tension in the air, we are bound to have something in the future. That is why we must always be prepared for anything, Naruto said calmly. I guess I should depart as well. I want to travel a bit quickly. He was going to have to go through the sound, there was a possibility of being seen, but if he blitzed through the country, he could make way without meeting any trouble. The other choice was going through the land of fire, but that would just make his journey long. He still had to travel a long and slow journey with Princess Koyuki. It was going to be a truly long journey. But perhaps it would be worth the effort. Who knows? He might end up getting more than he expected. Things had been just fine with her the last time around. It has been a couple of years but nothing had changed, and the bonus was that there would no Jiraiya trying to hit on the princess or attempting to make her a subject of his research. Naruto shook his head at that thought. Don't take too long, Jiraiya said, and a bit seriously. There are still a couple of things we must do before we head back to Konoha. And with how things are at the moment, Tsunade will keep knocking. Naruto merely nodded and went on to pack his things. Hidden Leaf. Just when you think things couldn't be bad, they just turn out to be really bad. Was there no other way the elemental nations could go about doing things without anyone threatening to destroy the other? Well, it hasn't taken much to start wars before, and it looked like it wasn't going to take much this time around. And she had been thinking that the generation of Naruto would not get to live through a war, but that looked like it was something that would happen. Nothing was sure, but if they moved safely, they might avoid war. Tsunade stared at Jiraiya's message once more and deepened her frown. Anaki was going to be a difficult person. She had to measure up against him. She wasn't going to allow him to do as he pleases because he thinks Konoha is just a relic of the past. It was indeed true that the village has lost out on much of its military power, but they were still a great nation. The losses were massive though. Tsunade could admit that much with bitterness. The military strength of the Uchiha was no more, Minato was dead, the Sandaime was gone. Even though he was old, he still had his presence and mind. He would have still been the professor. The Kyuubi incident also killed many. Yes, massive losses indeed. The Slug Princess looked up when Shikaku walked into the office. She permitted him to sit down before talking. I have called you here because you're the Jonin commander and I need to know the status of our elite shinobi, Tsunade said in a serious tone. Shikaku looked curious, but he didn't want to think deeply about it. If Tsunade was asking such a question, there was something happening. Well, he had thought that there would be something that would happen soon with the revival of the Uzumaki. There were so many great nations involved in the mess that it wasn't something that could be ignored. It isn't as good as it was during the Third War, Shikaku said. Unlike other nations, Konoha has taken a relaxed stance in training its shinobi. This is due to the Sandaime Hokage's policies. We have been enjoying the peace without being conscious that war could start any time. There had been some objections to the Sandaime's policies, but he was the Hokage and no one could defy him. Doing so would be insubordination. However, the policies left the current academy being truly useless in terms of teaching students anything useful about the shinobi world. The Sandaime had always said there was no need because there was no war. They were at peace, living peacefully. There was no need to train the young ones as if preparing for war. There was the danger that if you train them preparing for war, when anything happens, you're always ready for war. You won't hesitate because you have been preparing for it. The Sandaime had been conscious of it, but perhaps he took things a little too far. It was nevertheless understandable at that time because there was no one who thought that there would be a situation that could lead to war. They could not ignore the fact that the likes of Iwa and Kumo have been building their military strength since the last war, and it hasn't fought in any battle that would make it lose at its best shinobi. Konoha hadn't gained anything but has been losing. Tsunade stared at the Nara for a long minute before nodding her head a bit grimly as if she was in pain. What do you think our best option is with regards to the Uzushio situation? Have we established connection with it? Shikaku asked. Tsunade shook her head. But Jiraiya is going there to see a couple of things. Once we have seen, I will send someone to try to broker some form of connection with the village. For now, we have been moving slowly as the village hasn't made contact with us either. Shikaku looked thoughtful for a moment before nodding his head. He could understand Tsunade's reasons. And he had nothing against them. I've heard that they don't allow people in. Is it going well? Team 7 took a mission to the Land of Snow a couple of years ago. Naruto seemed to have made an impression with the daimyo there. This daimyo, Princess Koyuki Kazahama, she has requested Naruto's services in guarding her towards Uzushio. I have assigned Jiraiya as well to the request. Now this was something that opened a curious door. He didn't know if it was a good idea to let Naruto see Uzushio, but they needed to see where his loyalties lie. This was a good opportunity for them to test Naruto's loyalties, and also for Jiraiya to get valuable information about the village. Isn't this a little suspicious? Everything is suspicious, Tsunade said firmly. But I cannot question the connection between Naruto and the princess. I have read Kakashi's report on their mission. I assume that she is probably going there for the Land of Snow's technology. From what Kakashi said, the Snow is a technologically advanced nation that even uses tools like chakra armors and trains for transportation. Perhaps Uzushio wants to acquire this technology. But shouldn't Uzushio have provided for her security? I did think of that, but what if she said she wanted Naruto and they agreed to it as they get to see one of their own without going through the effort of approaching him away from their home? Tsunade asked. They have been very secretive. Even though they seem to rely heavily on the wave country, you will never see any Uzumaki in the wave. The leader of the wave always goes to Uzushio. Shikaku was silent for a couple of moments. He was still suspicious about the whole thing, but for now, the benefit outweighed his suspicions. Perhaps it was the convenience about the whole issue. Either way, they would be able to confirm some things and be able to make decisions on their part. At best, I think our best option is to do things that don't threaten Konoha's security, Shikaku stated in a stern tone. It isn't just Iwagakure that was involved. I know there is a lot of mystery about it, but we know it is more than just one village that was involved. If it is so, and they decide to attack, do you think Konoha will be able to deal with it? Tsunade bit her lip. This was a situation she hoped she could avoid, but that would be the reality if they could not stop the great nations from touching Uzushio. It was truly going to be a difficult task. Winning against Iwagakure wasn't even guaranteed, but if another village entered the fray, Konoha would face destruction. It would be especially worse if Kumo got involved. The village has 2 Jinchurikis who can fully transform. Tsunade had a job, and it was to protect the village. She would certainly not do anything that would result in the leaf facing destruction, even if it meant turning a blind on Uzu's destruction. Would she regret it? Perhaps not. But would she be filled with guilt for allowing Konoha to be destroyed? Very much so that she would wish she had a second chance to change things. But there was none of that in this world. Once you died, it was all over. We wouldn't be able to deal with the danger, Tsunade said. Shikaku felt there was something else coming, but? What do you think, Shikaku? Well, if they attack and we do nothing, it is likely they might feel a bit too confident and decide to attack us as well. It is unlikely but a possibility. When it happened last time, we were not told of it, we just heard about it after it had happened, and yet the village did nothing. That is something that worries me about how the Uzumaki will react to our attempts to form connections with them. Trying is an effort we have to take regardless, Shikaku said. People might not know, they might not even know the Uzumaki as a clan, but those of us who know understand the importance of the clan to Konoha. The village has influenced many things about us, we still wear their symbol, and many people in the village wear the symbol without even realizing where the symbol comes from. Our Fuinjutsu is a legacy of the Uzumaki. They provided for us. When the Kyuubi had to be transferred to another host, the Uzumaki sent one of their own. And even now it is one of them who holds the Kyuubi. That is a service to Konoha that we cannot simply ignore. Even the past leadership seemed to sweep it under the rug because of the clan's destruction. Her sensei. Konoha. Yes, this village was truly ignorant of how just valuable having the Uzumaki as an ally was to Konoha. But what has Konoha done for the Uzumaki? In any case, we have to improve training, place strict rules on shinobi. You will draw out a new curriculum for the academy that will overhaul the current one. Jonin senseis will have to take their jobs seriously in ensuring that their students are ready for anything. Is that acceptable? Shikaku nodded. I will work on it, he said. Should I call the Jonins who have teams to you? Tsunade nodded. Yes. I will deliver the message, but we must be careful that word of it doesn't become public knowledge. The Jonins must be sworn with keeping the secret to themselves. We don't want anything that will create tension in the village and burden the young ones. The Godheim said. Perhaps if we change things in the academy, we will be able to weed out those who are no fit to become shinobi. There are too many of them these days. Shikaku was willing to admit. Shikamaru was surely going to be displeased with having to work harder than he would like. He could imagine his son's reaction to the news, but Konoha had to prepare. They had to prepare themselves for anything. Things looked like they could get dangerous. This is why we must take action, Tsunade said. If we are going to end up going to war, I want to have shinobi who are ready, shinobi who know what they are getting themselves into. I don't want to send people to war simply for the numbers. Land of Frost. Naruto was waiting by the harbor, waiting for Koyuki's ship to finally arrive. He had arrived at the port 2 days ago, and each day he came here. He was always checking in to see if she would arrive earlier than expected. But she had not. Yet, he'd waited. The sound of the ocean was soothing, it had felt natural. Perhaps that was why he had enjoyed coming here and didn't mind sitting by the dock every day. People stared and asked questions, but he hadn't been a creep who ran away from people when they asked questions. There had been a fisher who saw him since he came here, and the man greeted him each day, asking if his guest was coming. The man saw him in the morning and in the evening. He always asked the same question, and Naruto's response had always been the same. It was still early morning on this day, but Naruto was already up, feeling the cold breeze that washed over the atmosphere. It was around that time that a large ship docked with Princess Koyuki. He had smiled as he saw the woman getting out of the ship with a couple of people around her. Well, she was the daimyo, she needed her entourage. She was still an actress, she needed her guards. Naruto hoped that he didn't have to guard everyone with her. It was going to be a bothersome job that he wouldn't want to do, and Jiraiya hadn't said anything about these many people. He'd said only Princess Koyuki. Perhaps they were going to stay within this land and wait for her return. Princess. Naruto greeted with a smile. Koyuki smiled and held out her right hand. Naruto, she said as the blonde gently took her hand and kissed it, her smile brightened. You have grown, she said. What lives must grow, Naruto said calmly. You haven't aged at all. I see you're still the same charming woman as you were then. Oh, you flatter me, Koyuki said. Perhaps. Naruto responded. Are they coming in for the journey? He asked, looking at the people walking behind her. Koyuki shook her head and then turned to her people for a moment before glancing back at Naruto. No. They are staying here. Once I got out of the ship, it was no longer their duty to protect me. They will not travel with us but will stay here and wait for me. Naruto glanced at the people behind the princess for a moment. They didn't look particularly pleased with those words, but what could they do? When the master says this has to be done, you do it. If you don't do it, you get fired, and someone who can do what is requested is hired without asking too many questions is hired. Naruto didn't doubt his abilities to protect the princess against any danger. If things got too dangerous, he could always summon the toads. He hasn't been doing it recently. In fact, he has gone out of his way to avoid summoning them. Perhaps this was why the Toad Chief had stared at him with a curious glance the day he had faced Sasuke. Either way, he would have to do it if things got a little difficult. He doubted it nevertheless, but there was no harm in thinking of all possibilities. Jiraiya was fine with it because the Sannin understood his strength better than anyone else. Perhaps not as much as he thought he did, but he knew better than anyone. Jiraiya didn't know everything that he could do. Some things had to be kept away from people. As a shinobi, you didn't always reveal your cards, now did you? You will be protected with my life. Koyuki smiled. I expect nothing less, she said. I didn't think you'd be coming alone. Well, I am not complaining. This does give me a chance to talk to you without anyone interfering. Naruto raised an eyebrow in curiosity but didn't raise his questions about the tone of her voice. Jiraiya will join us in the wave country. He had to go for a little detour, but you should not worry about your safety. I will take care for you. The princess nodded. She bid farewell to her people and Naruto took her things before they walked away from the port. There was a carriage waiting for them along the way. Koyuki stared at it for a moment before looking at Naruto. We are not going by land, are we? She asked. Land would be too much for her, and certainly not in that small thing. There wasn't enough room. Where was she going to bath? Naruto certainly didn't expect her to spend time sitting on that thing and then be forced to help herself behind a bush, did he? We are, Naruto said with a smile. I think you will enjoy it. My clones will carry the carriage and I will ride with you. We will camp out in the forest, eat fish, and you'll bath when we find a stream of water. It will be fun. It will be like the shinobi experience. Koyuki frowned. If there had been a route, I would have gone around the lightning country and gone straight to Uzu or the wave. Naturally, I kid about all that, Naruto said. But that is what official records will show. I have arranged for something small along the harbor on the other side of the country. However, you must know that the journey might be troublesome. In what way? The sea on that other side is filled with pirates, Naruto said. We might encounter them along the way and I will have to fight them. There might be some discomfort, but for now, we have to use that to travel towards the other side of the country. Koyuki was silent for a couple of moments before nodding her head. For a moment, I thought you were serious about traveling inland. My sensei seemed to expect me to take the route because it is the safest, Naruto said. But we can change things. You'll be more comfortable. You just said there might be some discomfort. The princess with a stare. I misspoke. Naruto quickly said with a small smile. Come on, I don't want someone stealing our ride. He walked her to the small carriage. Naruto sealed away her things in a storage scroll and then created clones to carry the carriage. Once he was done, he also stepped into the carriage and it started moving. It's comfortable in here, Koyuki said as Naruto entered. The seats were soft and didn't hurt her butt. There was enough room to move her legs. Naruto could even seat across her, but she didn't want that. Please sit next to me. I want you a little closer. Naruto didn't question it, he merely moved to her side and settled in peacefully. It was a bit relaxing. He didn't mind that there was a woman sitting next to him with a fragrance that seemed to hypnotize his senses. She really did smell pleasant. He could almost move closer and then request to sniff her a bit. But he did not. He closed his eyes for a moment as he enjoyed the feeling. You're comfortable. Any reason I shouldn't be? It would be a little fun for me if you acted a bit nervous, Koyuki said with a smile. Naruto smiled. Perhaps a couple of years ago, he said. But I have overgrown that. Admittedly, you do have a certain presence about you. I want to hear more about that, but for now, I really need to take a nap, Koyuki said with a yawn. Naruto blinked. She hadn't looked like she wanted to sleep. He smiled, realizing that it had slipped his mind that this woman was an actress. Putting on masks was her natural for her. She could do it even better than trained shinobi. He shook his head. He was going to have to be careful. Are you sure you want to sleep? I could do things to you, Naruto said with a straight face. The woman giggled in thought. Her body fell over to his and she closed her eyes, said her last words before falling asleep. I trust you won't. But if you want to do something, you just have to ask. Trust? What a strong word to use. Shinobi were not the most trustworthy people. They could not be trusted. They lied and cheated whenever it was convenient. The creature that was called a shinobi was one you did not want to trust blindingly. But he did have an experience with the princess. She had watched him. She had learned from him. And Naruto liked to believe that he was a trustworthy person. Or maybe he was not. Naruto did nothing to disturb the princess from her nap. He too closed his eyes. He could afford to take a nap. He rarely took them during the day, but this was convenient. The person next to him was sleeping and the clones were keeping guard. If anything happens, he could be awoken. He didn't even think he could sleep in the sea. This was a good opportunity to sleep. And so, he forced his mind to obliviousness. Later that day, their boat was speeding through the vast waters. The sight was a little frightening. They were surrounded by water and if something happened, they would sink to their deaths. Naruto was a shinobi, But what could he do against the forces of nature? Koyuki hadn't tried to think deeply about it as it would make her uncomfortable with the whole journey. It was just her and Naruto, there was no need to have such thoughts. The blonde was sitting by himself, his clone navigating the boat. He was with a bottle of alcohol with him, an expressionless on his face. She hadn't seen that look before. It was strange. He could project himself as a happy person, but with a bottle beside him, he looked a bit miserable. It was as if he was reliving something from the past. Koyuki wasn't a stranger to hiding feelings, she wasn't a stranger to putting on masks. She had put on one after being saved from death when her father was killed. She had moved around, playing the character of a princess. She was truly a princess, but she had suppressed the reality and focused on the acting, the mask, and the lies. What a life it had been. Koyuki sat beside the blonde, who glanced at her for a moment before staring into the space ahead of him. "You'd looked at peace a few moments ago, looking at the sea and enjoying the air that came with being here," she said. Peace? That was strange. Maybe something foreign in his heart, his crowded head. Has he ever been at peace in his whole life? It was something he desired, but he could not truly grasp because really, he was a little miserable in the inside. He plays the role of a delightful person quite well. He had played it since he entered the academy, when he was playing Jinan, even with Jiraiya. But was his life really that delightful? It had the potential to be something else, but not now. Not when he was still like this. "I sometimes enjoy a good view of nature. And when the wind blows like this, it fills all my senses with feelings that make me want to enjoy it," Naruto said with a small smile. "If you become attuned to nature, you get to feel its mood." Something like that. Koyuki stared into the clear sky. It was going to get dark soon. They would travel all night and probably reach their destination somewhere in the afternoon, but she wasn't complaining. There was calmness in the sea. She was calm. The atmosphere wasn't bad, and best of all, she didn't have to think about her duties and the nagging old geezers she has in her country. "I can never be in the same wavelength with nature. I am just blissfully oblivious to its mood. What I see is what I believe," the princess said. "Well, you are a shinobi, you train in such things," she said. She took the bottle away from Naruto and put it on her lips. "That's nice," she said. "Strong. I think I was drinking you when guys came to get me." Naruto nodded. "Yes. Drinking alone in bar," he chuckled. "Something amusing?" Naruto just shook his head. "I just remembered something," he said. The drinking alone, it had become his favorite time, hasn't it? Perhaps it was the solitude and the idea of loosening the screws in the head that made him a little free. He would have to watch it, though. He drank a little too much when he tells himself it was time for the party. It has been a long journey. "Yeah," Koyuki said, thinking of her own miserable journey. "When did you start drinking?" "I don't know," Naruto said. "One day my sensei invited me over to a bar and I was drinking. I had a couple, and when my mind felt loose, I felt that there was nothing holding me back. There was no anger, no hatred, no burdens. I felt free." But when drinking, he tells himself that he was drowning in his misery. Maybe that was right. Maybe not, and he was just drowning his misery away in the alcohol. "That is dangerous, you know," Koyuki said in a serious tone. "You can't allow yourself to be drunk to experience freedom. You are still young. If you get into it, you will have difficulty trying to break free." Saying that, she took the bottle away from him and put it on her side. "No more drinking for you." "Are you my boss now?" "Yes. I did hire you after all," Koyuki said in a firm tone. "What kind of a guard are you anyway? How do you drink when on duty?" Naruto smiled. "It is unprofessional," he said. "Despite what I said, I don't really get drunk that often. Over the past year, you can count the times I have been drunk, and that is maybe 3 times. There are days I set myself up just for drinking. The last time I got drunk was simply doing it because the people I was with were drunk." Koyuki looked thoughtful. "What makes you miserable, Naruto?" "The past. Wasn't I also hindered by the past? It was the past that made me unable to face forward. No, I just didn't want to face it. I ran away from it. That was why, but I am not running away from my past. I have stared into its hateful eyes, fought with it, sometimes it nearly knocked me out, but I have fought it and I have not lost. But because it has been filled with injustice, I can't let it go. I want to wear it over my shoulders and express the injustice to those responsible." "What happens if you don't?" "If I let it go? I won't be miserable, I'll be free, but nothing changes." "Nothing changes, Koyuki. This is why I have resolved to carry it. But it is proving to be difficult." Naruto nodded his head, a sad smile on his lips. He responded in whisper. "I have had time to think about things clearly. You know, Thinking and thinking has been what signifies my whole life. I have thought of many things, being happy, being miserable, regrets if I chose to walk on the wrong path. Things are always changing in this world. Nothing ever remains same. You will change. But I think I have reached a point where I can't change anymore. I have accepted my roles, my job, my path. The princess said. Changing means abandoning it all or doing things in a different manner, but I don't want to abandon my people, and the way I've been doing things has made my people happy, so I am content with things as they are. She paused and stared at the blonde. If you change, what do you think your change will do? How will it affect those around you? Naruto didn't respond to the question, but he did smile, looking at the princess a bit fondly. Princess, you have truly become a different person. You were a miserable person when we first met, you look at you now. She smiled. It comes with the job, she said. Wave country. You have a strange look on you, Jiraiya said, watching the blonde stand motionlessly. Naruto glanced at the toad sage for a moment before looking up into the sky. He was truly always wondering if there was life within the heavens, but he didn't know. He would most likely never know about it because he could never reach there. It wasn't a place for humans. No matter how many times they try to go up, they would eventually be dragged back down to the ground. When did you arrive, sensei? Naruto asked calmly after a couple of moments of silence. Not long ago, Jiraiya said. Where is our friend? Resting. She didn't get much sleep along the way. Naruto responded before putting both his hands in his pockets and started walking away. This had been his training ground when they arrived to the Wave Country, a place he had met Haku, that delightful had such innocence and purity. It had made him reflect on himself. Perhaps it suited Haku given his bloodline. White was a symbol of purity. He contained the Kyuubi, a Baijiu known for its hatred and malice. I hope that wasn't your fault, Jiraiya said in a sly tone. Naruto glanced at the Sannin, who was now walking beside him. If you had any shame, I would ask the question, but I know the answer, he said with a shake of his head. It is the journey, he said. You are truly strong when you fight to protect someone precious to you. Someone said words along those lines while I was here. I am really a sentimental person, so I keep such things in my head. That is indeed the truth, Jiraiya said with a nod. He wasn't agreeing to Naruto's thoughts about being sentimental, but the words he had been told. We have to go now. Time isn't really on your side. We have things to do and you have another training to do. What training? Jiraiya merely grinned. I'll tell you after this mission. The sage said. Naruto shook his head. He didn't question the Sannin, he just continued walking with the man in silence. They walked through the streets of the Wave. It had truly changed from the last time he came here with Team 7 on their first mission outside of Konoha. He was a little bit of a known person in this place. Then again, they had a bridge that was connected to the Fire Nation named after him. When they reached the hotel Koyuki was at, they found the princess sitting a single couch. I was wondering where you had run off to, Naruto, she said before glancing at the man beside the blonde. Jiraiya-sama, she greeted without a smile. Jiraiya smiled. Princess Koyuki, you look as beautiful as always. The princess didn't respond to Jiraiya's compliment. Are we going now? I took the liberty of preparing everything. You know, the people in Uzushio are waiting for me and I'd rather not let them wait for me. We are going to depart now, Naruto said as he walked over to take Koyuki's things. I assume you two have some history. Well, given Jiraiya's skills, it shouldn't be surprising. I wouldn't call it a history, Koyuki said. But we did meet once. She responded as she stood up. I thought your sensei was someone else, not him. You had Kakashi with you the last time around, what changed? He was relegated, Naruto said with a shrug as he looked around to ensure that he wasn't missing anything. I don't need to say anything, but I really hope you behave, sensei. We don't want you doing anything that might get us in trouble with the leaders of Uzushio Gakure. Jiraiya glared at Naruto. I'm not a child, you know, and I should be the one telling you to behave, he said sternly. You really have no respect for your sensei. Naruto shrugged his shoulders carelessly. There isn't really much worth respecting, pervert sensei. You're calling me that in front of her? Jiraiya looked shocked. Naruto said carelessly. It is the truth, and if you have met her before, it means she knows you are a pervert, right? Jiraiya mumbled something under his breath, causing Koyuki to laugh. You two seem to get along just fine, she said with a smile. Well, he is my sensei. Why are you putting it like that? Who knows? Naruto said before turning his attention to the princess. They walked safely for a couple of minutes and got into a large ship that was waiting for them. Naruto helped Koyuki into the ship and helped her towards her resting place. She stayed there and Naruto walked towards the deck, where Jiraiya was waiting for him. I couldn't get a damn thing about Uzushio Gakure from the people in the wave, not even the merchants know something, Jiraiya said with frustration. I couldn't get a chance to work with the leader of the wave, but I doubt I would have been able to get anything. How do you control a nation, have so much influence over it, and yet the people around you remain clueless on who you truly are? He had no doubt in his mind that he was truly dealing with some crafty people in Uzu. It did make him excited knowing that he was finally going to meet them, but he really hoped that he was able to learn something. If they managed things in the same level as they did with the wave, it was really going to be a difficult mission and one that would truly make him nervous. Iwa's actions could be determined by what he was able to find, and before Tsunade sends anyone to the village, she needed something that she could work on. She wouldn't get it if he wasn't able to work around Uzushio's security measures. I cannot answer that question, Jiraiya. You are the one who deals with intelligence, you ought to know, Naruto said with his eyes staring directly into the water below. You're not helping, Jiraiya said with a frown. I didn't think you needed my help, sensei. You did go on your way to do things without me. You can still continue without me. But if you need my help, I can offer my services. Jiraiya shook his head. I can't expose you like that. The Sannin said in a calm tone. You need to focus on protecting Princess Koyuki and I will handle the other issues. I hope I don't get caught, he said with a shake of his head. But if I still get caught, it is part of the work. I doubt they'll do anything about it. I hope you don't get them thinking that she intentionally brought spies into their village, Naruto said to the Sannin. That is something I have to consider when moving. The Sannin said in thought. But I simply can't let this chance pass. Them banning me from their village will be worth stopping Iwagakure trying to invade Uzu once more. Naruto said nothing in response. Uzushio Gakure. Jiraiya's eyes were as sharp as when he was in his younger days, he didn't want to miss anything. The first thing he noted was that there was no way to enter the village with the whirlpools twirling around. They were stopped before their ship passed. It made him realize that some of them were man-made. It was possibly the work of Fuinjutsu. When the ship docked, there was only one person who was there. But there had been 4 large ships docked by the small seaport. He assumed that although there were no people around, this was probably the only way to enter Uzushio Gakure. The man who was waiting for them was just a civilian. He led them through a narrow road surrounded by trees. After walking for a while, they reached 2 large gates that were closed. The man told them he was stopping there and then turned away to leave. One of the gates slowly opened and the 3 moved closer before entering the village. It was a completely different atmosphere. There were people around. A bit tall buildings made up the village. The buildings didn't use wood like what they use in the Hidden Leaf. Across a stream of water that went through at the heart of the village, Jiraiya could see ruins, the result of destruction. Perhaps they had been left there as a form of a reminder to what was done to them. What was obvious was that the village seemed a bit bigger than he had anticipated, and that worried him. The people seemed different, and Jiraiya concluded that these were people from different lands. Everything looked normal. He couldn't see a single shinobi. He couldn't see any red hair. But when they arrived deeper into the village, Jiraiya started to see them, the Uzumaki. Jiraiya searched for Naruto's reaction, but there was none. It was then that another person took over escorting them. Haku smiled at the guests. Princess Koyuki. I am pleased to see you again, he said quietly. Jiraiya-sama. He then turned to the blonde. Hello Naruto. It is good to see you again. I was actually happy when told that you'd be coming here. You know each other? Jiraiya was quick to ask. Haku nodded. I was their enemy in his first mission out the leaf, he said. Please follow me, I will lead you to your hotel. Jiraiya took the chance to walk beside Haku so that he could ask questions. Although he could see red hair, there wasn't many of them. This was what destruction did, wasn't it? Perhaps if they hadn't been destroyed, they would have been running through the streets, looking all energetic as Kushina had been. I don't see a lot of Uzumaki around. These are just the handful of survivors from the invasion, Haku said. But even before, the village wasn't full of Uzumaki people. There were other people around. You are not from here, are you? Haku glanced at the Sannin with a smile. Jiraiya-sama, we know about you. To be honest, there was a debate about letting you into the village. We assumed that you'd behave given that you are here on a mission. And we would like you to behave. We cannot allow you to walk around the village without anyone accompanying you. If possible, we'd like you to stay by Princess Koyuki's side. Jiraiya frowned. You're not even going to let us take a tour around the village? Haku shook his head. No, he said. You are not here for a tour, are you? But we would, however, offer one to Naruto. Special treatment? The Sannin asked with narrowed eyes. You could call it that. But it is a fact that he is Uzumaki. They are treated as precious commodity in here. Jiraiya glanced at Naruto at the corner of his eyes. You say that, but you haven't made a move on him. That should be simple to understand, Haku responded calmly. Naruto is a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf. Any movement towards him wouldn't be welcomed. It is something else since he is a Jinchuriki. The leaders doubt Konoha wouldn't be willing to part with the Kyuubi. Without a doubt, but the Kyuubi wouldn't be the only reason. Naruto was a valuable asset to the Hidden Leaf, and allowing him to leave would only weaken them. But it would also cause Uzushio trouble if other villages knew that the village was in possession of the Kyuubi. They would quickly turn their attention to destroying it without asking any questions. That was a reality that he didn't want to see. Haku didn't say anything more to the Sannin. He simply led them towards the hotel before departing. They were all booked in different rooms, with Koyuki surrounded by the two men. Jiraiya knocked in. Naruto walked into Naruto's room and found the blonde lying flat on his back. The window was there, but he wasn't by it. Tell me about that, Haku. There is nothing much to tell other than the last time I saw him he was dead and that he holds a bloodline. Ice release, Naruto said while staring at the crimson ceiling. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes with a bit of danger in it. Dead? You certainly didn't look like you saw a ghost when you saw him. It was like you knew he had been alive. Naruto glanced at the Toad Sage for a moment with an expressionless mask on his face. You don't have to shout, he said. That aside, regardless of what, when have you seen me giving any funny reactions? I had more things to think about other than seeing someone who was supposed to be dead. We are not exactly living in a world that doesn't make the impossible possible. Jiraiya was silent for a moment. I forgot that you were walking in the very land that your mother was born. The Sannin said. When are you going to take the tour? I haven't thought of it, Naruto said with a slight shrug. Take it tomorrow. You might be able to move freely given that you are Uzumaki. And they are offering the tour. The Sannin said in a firm tone. I will head out later on, you can watch the princess. I plan to do so, Naruto said. It is going to get dark soon. For now, I will take a nap, and when I wake up, I will go to the princess to entertain her. As her guard, I can't leave her to be alone before she decides to rest for the night. Later that night. It looked like it didn't have any shinobi, but when it was night, you could not mistake it, there were shinobi around the village. Jiraiya could feel shinobi moving around the buildings, but there was one place that seemed to hold secrets, the Emperor's compound. It didn't seem to hold any guard. There was no one around. It was curious, but although he was cautious, he could not afford not go. He had been extra cautious about approaching the villagers. He didn't want them to know anything. The moment he starts asking questions, he was likely to land himself into trouble with the people watching over the streets as if they were hawks. The Toad Sage climbed the wall that took him into the compound. His instincts kicked in as he felt that he was in a dangerous place. He only took a single step before someone flashed in front of him. He frowned, he had been caught. There was only one person. If he managed to disable her, he could still try something. He took a stance but was forced to take a step back when a wall of crystal formed around him. Guran smiled seeing the Sannin in a fighting stance. He was a powerful shinobi. She would rather not fight him. That aside, fighting him was pointless since she wasn't going to end up torturing him or cutting off his head. Jiraiya-san, I believe you were warned about walking without someone to guide you. She did not move from her position. I couldn't find the guide. The Sannin said, he still had his guard up. I don't plan on fighting you, Guran said. Do you know where you are? The Emperor's compound. The Sannin responded. Guran nodded her head. You are not allowed to enter the grounds of the compound unless invited by the Emperor or given the permission to come in and go as you please. It is a rule in this village and the people respect it. You are not one of us, we usually don't forgive rats. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes with danger. Usually? Well, you are a special case and we don't want to end up having any problems with Konoha. However, since you obviously cannot be trusted to follow our village rules, we will escort you out early in the morning. For now, please don't make any trouble. Allow me to take you back to your room, where you will not leave for the rest of the night. If I refuse? I have heard that a couple of times, but do you want to find out? Jiraiya had an itchy feeling. He was certain he could handle the woman, but there was something off within the compound grounds. He touched down the ground and channeled chakra. It was quickly absorbed. So this is how you found out I was here, he said looking towards Guran. There is a massive barrier within the compound that tracks chakra and absorb it as well. I guess for me, whose chakra is foreign, I can't use ninjutsu in this place. Guran didn't comment on the Sannin's words. Are you going to allow me to escort you? How is this going to affect things? It depends on your reasons, really. We don't think you are a bad person, but we still don't like people who don't follow our rules, Guran said. What is your reason, Jiraiya-san? Jiraiya considered his options for a moment before speaking. Iwagakure wants to determine whether you are an enemy or not. They said if they discover that Uzushio is an enemy, they are going to destroy this village. When I told him that Konoha wouldn't stand for it, he said it was fine. I am concerned about what he will do. I thought I'd find something, I would be able to give something to the Tsuchikage that would calm things a bit. Why didn't you just ask? Jiraiya smiled. Well, he really couldn't say. You still need to leave tomorrow, Jiraiya. But if Konoha asks nicely, we may respond, Guran said as she started to walk towards the Sannin. Shall we? She snapped her fingers and the crystal disappeared. Jiraiya frowned. You're also a bloodline holder, aren't you? You are a spy all right, Guran said. But please, Jiraiya, don't try to leave your room this time around. We will know and we won't be pleased about it. We will be forced to make you leave even at this time, and the sea can be rather moody at night. Meanwhile, at times, Naruto really applauded his ability to be able to talk to anyone about anything. He hadn't been used to regular contact with people. Quite honestly, the Shinobi Academy had been one of his biggest tasks. But Naruto had done it. He had pulled it off and still continued to pull it off. He was also able to understand certain things about people. Perhaps the nights in the bars were truly helping him in understanding people better. There was no human. If you were going to work out with people, you needed to be able to understand them, to know them, and to be able to read them. The real journey was up ahead. He was still learning many things about the shinobi world, about the great nations. Hiruzen had taught him most things about the elemental nations, but he was learning it through experience. Sticking with Jiraiya had truly been a good idea on his part. Then again, the Sannin wasn't a bad person. Naruto was sure he was busy trying to infiltrate Uzushio defenses to gain information. Naruto snorted at the thought. There wasn't going to be any luck in anything. Still, Jiraiya liked to gather information. His instincts could not be refused when he sensed something fishy. It's not really a good thing to be occupied with your thoughts when you are sitting with a beautiful woman, Princess Koyuki said to Naruto with a smile on her lips. Naruto glanced over at the black-haired woman before shaking his head. It depends on what you are thinking. I might be thinking deeply about you. He offered. If you are a nervous child who is afraid to voice his thoughts, I can understand that, but you are not a nervous child, are you? Naruto smiled. Who knows? He threw his hands in the air. Koyuki was silent for a couple of moments before speaking on a different matter. There is no place like home, is there? I was forced to flee when my father was killed by my uncle. I never looked back. I enjoyed being an actress, yet I was miserable. I had left my home and my uncle was doing as he pleased. But now, I am back home, I feel at ease, at peace. I am happy. As you say, there is no better place like home, Naruto said. You're always fond of home because you know no matter, I can always go back there. Besides, what is better than being of service to your people? The daimyo smiled. Nothing is better, she said. Though, you do need to live. When acting, I simply have to focus on being an actress, but after being feudal lord demands more attention from my side. My advisors are always nagging me about this and that. It is frustrating at times. Naruto chuckled lightly. I thought you'd be used to it by now, he said. Can't get used to it, she said with a shake of her head. It even makes me fearful knowing that I will be daimyo for the rest of my life. Feudal lords are not chosen like kids of hidden villages. They were the people who ruled over countries not by skill and qualification but by birth. You'll probably be replaced by your heir. Koyuki frowned. I'm not married yet, she said. The people there are trying to force me into marriage with princes from other nations just so I can have an heir. They'd be more than happy if I quit my job after producing a successor. Well, you are the only one in your family, so you have to do something, Naruto said. Say, Naruto. She started in a firm tone. You have a good standing. When you have reached that age, can you promise to marry me? Naruto stared at the woman for a long minute trying to figure out if she was serious or not. When she didn't say she was joking, he sighed. You want me to get killed by your fanboys? She smiled. I doubt they'd succeed, she said with amusement. Most of them who want to marry me are after money and fame. Those who just like me are just not worth it. What of me? You'll be at your home and I will be at my home, Koyuki said. It will be convenient. But we would have to talk about the other issues. You mean issues of the bed? Naruto asked with a straight face. The woman smiled slyly. You are not so innocent. You are not innocent either, are you, dear? Naruto said, but before Koyuki could respond, there was a knock on the door. Naruto called for the person to enter because the door wasn't locked. Guran walked into the room and looked between Koyuki and Naruto. They were sitting across from each other. There was peace in the room. Sorry to disturb you at this time, but I just wanted to inform you that we have caught one of your guards in the grounds of the Emperor's compound. Because he has disobeyed the rules and cannot be trusted not to do it again, we will escort him away tomorrow morning. He will return to the wave. I called it, Naruto said with a smile. You owe me 1,000 Ryo princess. I'm not paying that. You had inside knowledge, Koyuki said. Excuse me? Don't worry about it. I can understand, Koyuki said to Guran, who looked surprised. I will be fine. Uzu is the safest place anyway. My meeting is still scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m., yes? I'm not certain about that, Guran said with a shake of her head. I will have to inquire and report back to you. Koyuki shook her head. No need, she said. Thank you for the warning. I will have a word with Jiraiya-sama, she said. Guran knew she was being dismissed. She didn't linger around for much longer. She cast her eyes towards Naruto. She tried to say something, but he caught her look and smiled. A look flashed across her eyes. She returned the smile before turning away without another word leaving her lips. Who am I going to hold discussions with anyway? I assume you're not going to join. Yoshino, Naruto said. I'll be with Haku. The princess nodded. Where were we? Oh yes, we were getting to the good part before the interruption, Koyuki said with a smile. Naruto shared the smile. Uzushio will arrest you for trying your moves on a young one, princess, he said. Koyuki laughed upon hearing those words. I wouldn't mind, as long as I stay your prisoner. But you must still look after my land. She stood up after saying those words and then walked over to Naruto. She lifted her dress, exposing her thighs before she sat on him, both hands on his shoulders. You brought me all the way here, I'm allowed to do whatever I want with you. Besides, it's a little taste of what it will be like when we marry. I don't remember agreeing to marry you, Naruto said. He was saying that, his hands were already on her hips. At least you're not wearing your daimyo clothes. It would have been a hustle, he said. Koyuki smiled. Maybe, she said before leaning closer. Naruto suddenly pulled her closer. No teasing, he said before capturing her lips. Koyuki's lips were soft, she was taking the lead even though he was the one who initiated the kiss. He allowed her to do what she pleased, he permitted her tongue to slip through inside his mouth. After a couple of moments, they separated. Someone has been practicing, she said with a smile. And someone feels sexually frustrated, he said as he stood up. He carried the princess bridal style. Let us take the bedroom where the walls are thick and Jiraiya won't eavesdrop. Being carried like this, Koyuki smiled. There had been many moments she was carried like this in her movies. It has always felt so hollow, but this was exciting. This is rather fitting, you know. I am a princess, and you a. Naruto stopped her from talking by capturing her lips once more. Let us leave that, he said. When they arrived at the bed, he gently placed her down and quickly got atop of her before she decided to beat him to the punch once more. Slowly, he tore off her upper clothing, exposing her chest. You are going to pay for the replacement of those, she said with a smile. I will forfeit my pay on this mission. I thought you were paying for this mission as well? Naruto shrugged. I'm just a Jinan from Konoha, where do you think I will get that kind of money? Koyuki laughed in response. The following day, Naruto had laughed seeing Jiraiya's miserable face as he was being escorted away from the village. He never listened and had been caught red-handed. It served him right. The Sannin did have many moments in which he was caught doing things he shouldn't be doing. It was mostly when he was peeping, but he had never felt sorry for the sage and he hadn't felt anything even now as he was being taken away. He had even waved his right hand, saying goodbye to his sensei. The only thing that brought his mood down was the fact that Sannin was likely to question him more than he would have if he had done things right. It was going to be like an interrogation. But he has always handled questioning fairly well, hasn't he? Perhaps he had learned while being watched by the sharp gaze of the Sandaime Hokage. Those eyes might have been old, but they saw clearly. I'm surprised that he chose to disregard my warning, Haku said to Naruto. He had honestly been surprised to learn that the Sannin had been caught in the Emperor's compound. Couldn't the man have just relaxed in his hotel room without getting too curious? It was like this with everyone, wasn't it? Itachi did the same thing, but at least the Uchiha was never brought into the village. He was much of a danger than Jiraiya was. Well, the leaders would be happy that they finally got rid of the Sannin. They hadn't been exactly happy with his appearance in the village. It wasn't that he was seen as an enemy, but it was his curiosity that had been a bother. Jiraiya doesn't follow anyone's rules. He likes doing things on his own. Naruto responded calmly. Well, I am not sad he got caught. It should have taught him a valuable lesson. That is rather cold, Haku said. He is your sensei. Naruto shrugged carelessly. Jiraiya wasn't a child. He was a grown man. He didn't have to worry about the man's feelings. That aside, the man did like teaching by experience. This had been his own trial by fire. He broke the rules, he must face the consequences of such actions, Naruto said with indifference. Koyuki had already gone for her meeting. Naruto didn't know how long it would take. But he wasn't worried much about it. She was going to have another meeting in the evening and they would be able to leave Uzushio tomorrow morning. Jiraiya would be waiting impatiently for them. Perhaps by then he would have made another attempt pass through the village's defenses. For now, Naruto had time. He would have time for most of the day. With the princess away, he could wander around. He has missed the feeling. Sometimes. Haku didn't finish his thoughts, he shook his head. Do you want to settle down or should we go to side of the river? It was just ruins. A place left to remember the injustice of the past. It was a reminder of how cruel this world of shinobi could be at times. When he was 7, the image had brought in some raw emotions from him. He had experienced something strange and this emotion is what brought him to this point in his life. Naruto did wonder though, how different would things be for him if the Sandaime hadn't brought him here? Things would be different. He certainly wouldn't have been standing here. He would have been back in the Hidden Leaf, maybe miserable or happy. Anything could have been possible. Little things could make big changes. But Naruto was thankful to the old man for bringing him here, for everything he told him about the Uzumaki. By the time he came here, he had truly felt like he had known them, he was one of them. Naruto nodded his head but before he could say anything, his bird friend chirped as it landed on his left shoulder. He had missed this messenger. He hadn't been able to get the chance to do anything because Jiraiya was always around. He turned to Haku and spoke. Well, I wanted to spend some time, but as you can see, my friend here has brought me work. Chapter 7, The Emperor, A Prophecy and Discoveries. Sakura couldn't keep her excitement from her face when she walked into the office of the Godime Hokage. She had been summoned here and she had a feeling it to do with Sasuke, her beloved Sasuke-kun. She really hoped it was something good, hence her excitement. Tsunade wasn't smiling but that didn't make Sakura's smile falter, she kept it even when Tsunade stared at her. You called for me, Tsunade-sama. Tsunade nodded her head. She truly had more troublesome brats to deal with. Back in her days, brats were fighting in the war, there was no time to be a fangirl or anything. Fighting for survival, protecting your comrades, it was all that mattered. Today, they have time to think about worthless things. They even take their makeup when going on a mission. It was utterly ridiculous but this just showed how much the world has changed. Tsunade was going to straighten them. Those who were not worthy of becoming shinobi would not graduate from the academy. She would make sure that the graduation exam was a little challenging. She could not have kids who just want to play shinobi to become ninja when they could be facing war in the near future. Even if they did not face war, it was important to keep Konoha's defenses at best working condition in case something happens. Godime cleared her throat and spoke. Naruto encountered Sasuke, and they fought but Sasuke managed to flee with Orochimaru. Tsunade said those words in a simple tone, there was no other way to put it. She wasn't going to add anything unnecessary and she would not say when this had happened. I called you here just so you can know that Sasuke is alive and well. Sakura frowned, not the good news she wanted to know. She had always known that he was alive. She could feel it in her heart that her beloved was alive. But Naruto had seen him, he had fought him. That didn't surprise her. Before Sasuke decided to ditch Konoha, he'd been prone to fighting Naruto over little things. Someone always got in the way before things got serious. Oh. Sakura mouthed with disappointment. I know this isn't something you wanted to hear, Sakura, but I just thought you should know, Tsunade said. Sakura nodded. She hadn't even heard anything from Naruto. He didn't respond to the letter she sent him, it didn't make her smile. But she didn't want to think too deeply about it. Naruto was going to come back, and she would face him. He was still her teammate after all. You said Naruto, wasn't Jiraiya-sama there with him? Tsunade shook her head. Jiraiya wasn't there, he only joined in during the fight and that was when they were forced to flee. Who was winning? Tsunade tilted her head to the side. She was curious why Sakura would want to know. It wasn't a competition, was it? Jiraiya didn't say. She lied. Why do you ask, Sakura? Well, Sasuke-kun has always felt that he was superior. That was something she had ignored or just failed to see in their younger days. Of course, she did think about it now, but it didn't change anything about her feelings towards him. Sasuke would always glare at Naruto if he did something better than he did. She didn't want to admit this, but she did. Sasuke was always even jealous of Naruto. There had always been a feeling that Naruto never really tried too hard. I think his jealousy was part of the reason he felt he needed to leave Konoha. Tsunade frowned. So, if Naruto was winning? There is a chance that he might decide to abandon Orochimaru and go somewhere, Sakura said. If he lost, he'd feel frustrated and would think Orochimaru wasn't giving him what he wants. That is an interesting conclusion, girl, Danzo said as he stepped into the office. Sakura twirled around to face the man who spoke in a cold tone. She always had a chilling feeling whenever she saw this person. Now, she wasn't a good judge of character, but there was no way Danzo was a good person. If this man was a good person, then Jiraiya wasn't a shameless pervert. Granted, he has already shown himself as a jealous person and betrayed Konoha. If those feelings resurface, where do you think he will go? Sakura hesitated for a moment before responding. I think he will come back here. Naive, Danzo said in a cold tone and then dismissed Sakura just like that. He turned his attention to Danzo. What do you think, Hokage? Tsunade ignored the war hawk and turned towards Sakura. She smiled the pinkhead and then spoke. You may leave, Sakura. If there is anything else, I will tell you. Hi. Sakura hurriedly left the office. Tsunade's cold look turned towards Danzo. Since they were working together, he was appearing before her a bit more often. At least now he knew who was in charge of Konoha, and if he was going to try to undermine her rule, he wouldn't do it blatantly, he would do it in a way that he thinks she won't find out. There was still a minor problem with how things are in this situation. She wasn't going to tell him that there might be war, it might just entice him to do something ridiculous that would frustrate her planning. She didn't want anyone who would worsen things as they are. There was just no telling what the old man would do if things turned out dangerous. She didn't want him attacking any hidden village. Tsunade crushed the thought that she could not tell what Danzo would do. She knew quite well what he would do in a dangerous situation. If Kumo and Iwa proved that they could work together, Danzo would do everything in his best of capabilities to make sure that those villages end up fighting. With how skillfully crafty he was, she was certain that he would succeed in something like that. He was good player of the dark arts after all, and he has been playing the game in the past wars. What Sasuke will do isn't the least of my concern, Tsunade said in a stern tone. Well, if he does leave Orochimaru, we have more opportunities to take him back. Orochimaru is weakened in this time, so it wouldn't be difficult for Sasuke to leave, especially with the Sharingan. Orochimaru was quite arrogant and he would think he could do whatever he wants. Tsunade pitied her former teammate at times. If it does come to a point where he is brought back to the village, you should give him to me. I'm certain I can bend him to serve Konoha to the best of his abilities, Danzo said confidently. Somehow I don't doubt that, Tsunade said. But you'd also make him serve you, isn't it, Danzo? The war hawk didn't respond to Tsunade's question. So, you'll give him to me? What he demands is power, and power I can give to him. He is also someone who lacks emotional control, I can help with that. Tsunade looked thoughtful for a moment before responding. We will consider if we manage to capture him in time, she said. Then? What can I do for you? I heard that Jiraiya and Naruto were in Uzushio, Danzo said with narrowed eyes. It was certainly reckless to have Naruto go to Uzushio. What if he likes what he sees and then decides to bide his time before abandoning Konoha? Some people could not put clan past village. Shinobi like Itachi were truly rare. It was indeed a pity that Sasuke hadn't turned out like his brother. Perhaps if things had been different, he would have made a play. But he had been warned and so he stayed out of it. He was starting to see that it was now a mistake to have left the last Uchiha alone. That is true. They were there for a mission, Tsunade said. But they didn't get much information out of the land. Jiraiya was kicked out of the village after getting caught trying to find information. For some reason, Tsunade had laughed when she heard that the Sannin had been caught. It wasn't a situation she should be laughing at, but it was Jiraiya. Anything else? What mission? Escorting the Snow Daimyo. That is as far as we know, Tsunade said. And your search? No progress, Danzo said with a barely noticeable frown. They have even guarded against aerial approach. There is a barrier that surrounds the village, so you can't see anything from up. There is only one entrance. There is no village that is completely impenetrable, Danzo. Danzo nodded. He was able to finally agree on something with the god Hokage. It didn't please him nevertheless. They were humans, there was no defense that could be perfect. As long as they were dealing with people, they would make a way into the village. Entering isn't that much of a problem. If you have proper documentation, you might enter. But moving around the village is the problem. During day, the sun's light reaches everywhere. You can only hide under a shadow, but even then, you can't make any moves. It is quite possible that they use a similar principle when it comes to monitoring movements in the village. Tsunade didn't act surprised by hearing that information. Jiraiya had told her something similar. This really just meant that Uzushio had some adept sensors and few jutsu users. When it comes to the latter, it shouldn't be a surprise, it has always been their trade. We are thinking of sending a civilian since they seem to track down chakra movements. Tsunade waved her right hand at this. There is no need for that, for now at least, she said firmly. I am going to open a dialogue with them and try to see if we can negotiate something with them. I don't want a spy being caught there while we are talking. They will accuse us of negotiating in bad faith. Negotiate? Danzo asked. He looked surprised. Negotiate what with them? Excuse me? Do not be naive, Tsunade. Danzo slammed his cane on the floor. Uzushio's resurrection will cause a problem for us because both Kumo and Iwagakure will act. We cannot let them act before we do something. I value the work of Fuinjutsu and know what the Uzumaki have offered to this village, but we don't have to negotiate with them. Trying to get intel into the village is nothing more than an exercise to determine the village's strength before moving in. We need to think deeply about this. Tsunade wasn't really shocked that Danzo would think of invading Uzushio, their once ally. He would think that. She shook her head. He was thinking about it and actually thought that they were planning to do it. Was he thinking that it was best for them to take control of Uzu or just destroy it before their enemies get hold of it? This man was truly ridiculous. We are not going to invade Uzushio, Danzo. And I don't talk to me like that ever again. I understand the situation more than what you might think. She glared at the war hawk for a moment before speaking again. Don't think of doing something behind my back. If you are going to strap one of your agents with an Iwa uniform and send them to Uzu, just know that a seal can be removed, Danzo. If you put a seal on them to stop them from speaking, you know that you are dealing with people who understand Fuinjutsu more than you do. They can undo your seal and get what they want. If that happens, and someone is tracked down to you, I will feed you to them as a peace offering. Do you understand me? You are making a mistake, Hokage, Danzo said in a firm tone. You are making the same decisions Hiruzen would have made. If this village gets in trouble, I will not repeat myself to you, Danzo. Tsunade cut off the war hawk before he could finish talking. If I want your opinion, I will ask for it. Now, leave before you say anything else that will piss me off. Danzo eyed her coldly before twirling around. He left the office without saying another word to her. On his way out, he slammed the door, like a child. Tsunade sighed tiredly. She was starting to regret her decision to bring the war hawk in. But then again, if she hadn't done it, she wouldn't be able to anticipate his movements by hearing his thoughts about certain things. She knew how to handle things because she was certain of how he was going to do things. If anything happens, he was going to be the scapegoat. She didn't even feel bad for it. She called an Anbu to get her Kakashi and Neji. The silver-haired Jonin arrived in her office after about 10 minutes. This time around, he didn't have his perverted book at hand. Neji arrived a second later, looking as stoic as ever. He did the formalities of greeting everyone before waiting to hear why he had been called. Despite everything, Neji was the best out of Naruto's generation. He was even the first one to become Jonin. He was a good kid. She couldn't count the blonde in that comparison because she thought it wasn't fair. Then again, both had been unfortunate when growing up. Neji, what do you know about the Uzumaki clan? Tsunade asked calmly. He probably didn't know much since Konoha appeared to have done everything in its power to bury the history of the clan and its relations to the village. Uzumaki? He thought of Naruto when thinking about this, but he shook his head. Not much, he said. The Uzumaki clan was a prestigious clan that had always been close to the Senju clan. My grandfather was married to Uzumaki and the Yondaime Hokage's wife was Uzumaki. You probably already know about the Kyuubi and have seen something in Naruto with your Byakugan, haven't you? Neji nodded. He told me, he said calmly. The blonde had told him, his burden, his curse. A curse that was worse than the one on his forehead. Tsunade smiled. The Shodai Hokage's wife was the first Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and Naruto's mother became its second Jinchuriki. Naruto is its third. Do you follow? All Jinchuriki have been from the Uzumaki clan. Tsunade nodded. Yes, she said. You don't hear much about them because during the Second Shinobi World War, their village was destroyed because some villages feared them. They were masters of Fuinjutsu and they had considerably strong chakra that was able to suppress Baijuas, who were used as power balancers. Since the Second Shinobi World War, we have always thought that they ended, but they did not. It has come out that they have revived and their clan is fully functioning, but we don't know anything because the village is closed. I am going to attempt to start a dialogue with them. I haven't started, but if they permit it, you and Kakashi will head to Uzushio to hold discussions with them. Now, Uzu has always been our ally. It has done much for this village than you know. Most of the seals that are used in this village were developed by the clan. That swirling symbol on your flank jacket is a symbol of the Uzumaki clan. Do you understand just how much of a partner they were to Konoha? Neji nodded. To think that Naruto was from a clan. And not just any clan but a prestigious clan that Konoha valued so much it decided that its shinobi should wear its symbol. That was a massive honor. No matter how good of friends clans were, you never wear the other's symbol. Konoha had many great clans, but its shinobi didn't walk around wearing their symbols. Just how much of a bond did Konoha and Uzu have? Neji smiled. He wondered how the people who have resented Naruto will think about this. Is there something amusing? Tsunade asked. Naruto and I have a bit of a history, so I know how he was treated. I'm just thinking of how ironic it is, Neji said calmly. You said that Naruto's mother was Uzumaki and the Yondaime Hokage was married to Uzumaki. Is there any relation? I told you about the Uzumaki clan because you two will go on a mission to Uzu. You need to understand things and how you react and respond when you talk to them. But above all, I have chosen you two because of your dujutsu prowess, Tsunade said without answering Neji's question. I will call you when they say you can come. Neji nodded. He was careful with his words. Naruto is connected to Konoha's fourth Hokage, isn't he? The Yondaime was his father? That is a village secret, Neji, Tsunade said in a stern tone. Prepare yourself. I won't assign you any mission for the next month. We don't know when they will give their go-ahead, so you have to be ready at any time. Neji nodded and walked away without saying anything else. Kakashi, who had been silent throughout, then spoke. What happens when the Uzumaki consider us an enemy as well? Tsunade frowned at the thought. That is something I have been trying to ignore. She admitted. I don't know much of what happened in their destruction and why Konoha didn't do anything. The Sandaime would have answers, but he is dead. Well, that is troubling. Not so much, Tsunade said with a shake of her head. If Iwa and Kumo go after it, Uzu will not have any choice but to ally with us. It will be for their survival more than anything. I don't even think they would want to make enemies with all the great nations. They wouldn't survive that fight. And this time, there would be no one left, Kakashi said. What of Naruto? We will see when he comes back, Tsunade said with a shake of her head. It is most important now more than ever that he learns everything he can from Jiraiya. Even if Konoha cannot be involved, if he wants to fight for his clan, I will not stand in the way. That would be the least I can do for him. But if it is against the great nations, it will be sending him to his death. Kakashi, what has Konoha done for Naruto? If I stop him from going, and his clan is destroyed again, do you think he will ever forgive us? If we let him go and he fights as best as he can, we have the opportunity to save his life if it is in danger. Kakashi nodded. Tsunade didn't have any intention of allowing Naruto to die with the rest of his clan if the situation came to that point. But this also said that Konoha wasn't going to fight a battle that would see its very existence threatened. It feels like we are at those dreadful times once more, Kakashi said. War wasn't a mission. People died. The people you love die. Anything could happen. No one was guaranteed to return from the war. Not yet, but we have to be prepared for anything that happens, Tsunade said in a calm tone. I truly hope that it doesn't come to that. But in this world, the flames of war are simple to ignite. Land of the Toads. Naruto had never felt such peace before, he had never seen such beauty in nature before. This was truly a sacred land that wasn't corrupted by the blood of humans. The air felt fresh. It wasn't polluted by anything. Naruto felt like a man possessed, he just wanted to take a swim through the air and giggle like a fangirl, thinking lewd thoughts about the boy she loves. In this land, even the sun seemed to have a different vibe to it. The heavens seemed to look at the land much more brightly than any place he has ever touched. Naruto held out his right hand and then his left. He closed his eyes as he felt the air gather strongly around him, causing his hair to stand a bit wildly. Naruto then started twisting around. As he twisted, a tornado started to form around him, rising towards the heavens. The winds were so powerful that they started pulling everything towards them. Before they started pulling the boulders that laid around him, Naruto came to a halt and everything that was up began to fall. He watched the show with a smile. Someone is having fun. Jiraiya said. He was walking towards Naruto, Fukasaku with him. You just have to love nature, Ero-senin, Naruto said calmly. When the wind blows like this, it fills me with its mood and I just want to do things with it. I just want to be part of it. You are going to need that concentration, Jiraiya said in a calm tone. But that alone won't be enough. Then again, despite your large chakra reserves, you have fine chakra control. I'm almost jealous with how you are able to control it. You don't have the patience to learn, Naruto said with a shrug. But if you want to learn, we can take you to the sea and leave you there. You'll know, if you don't stand on the water using your chakra, you'll drown. Jiraiya thought about it for a moment. That is way too risky. You've always been taking risks, sensei. What is the difference now? There is a chance that I might actually die. Naruto merely smiled but didn't respond. He settled down and turned to the sage next to Jiraiya. Fukasaku-sama. He greeted politely. Naruto-chan. Fukasaku responded calmly. You have more chakra than Jiraiya had when he first came here and he still couldn't master sage mode. This might take time, he said. But you seem to be sensitive to nature, so it might not be. Naruto turned to Jiraiya. You failed to master sage jutsu? I didn't fail. I just didn't have enough time to learn. Jiraiya grumbled. Naruto smiled. Oh. My poor sensei. Your poor chakra control really does cost you a lot. You seem to struggle with a lot of things. Hell, even learning the Rasengan took you quite a while. And that was due to your chakra control. Lack of it rather, Naruto said. But it still does make me respect you more of what you have achieved. Even with all that, you have still managed to become as powerful as you are. Finally, you are showing me some respect, Jiraiya exclaimed happily. Naruto shrugged. I am going to perfect it and then gloat about it at every turn I get. Jiraiya frowned. There is no need to be like that, sensei. It happens, Naruto said with a wide smile. Are we going to start now, Fukasaku-sama? The Toad Sage nodded his head and then asked Naruto to follow him. They stopped behind a small fountain of water. The sound of the water was calming. Naruto had to settle down to enjoy the comfort. You must understand the risks of this training, Naruto-chan. The Toad said in a firm tone. Naruto's eyes snapped towards Fukasaku. Risks. I didn't know there were risks, he said. There is a risk. And it is death, Fukasaku said sternly. Natural energy is powerful but also dangerous to those who cannot control it. You need to have perfect control of it to be able to absorb it and regulate it within your body. If you absorb it and fail to control it, you'll turn into a toad and then a statue like those. Naruto looked at the many toad statues lining up. Well, great power comes with great dangers. You don't look that concerned. I will be if you don't have method to stop me turning into a toad, Naruto said in a very serious tone. There is a way. I just have to supervise you. And this is why I will tell you that you mustn't try absorbing natural energy unless I am with you. If I am not there and you lose control or absorb too much, you will turn into a statue. I am very good at following rules, Naruto said with a nod. Besides that, turning into a toad means the death of me. How is Jiraiya able to use Senjutsu if he hasn't perfected it? Ma and I absorb fuse with him and we absorb the chakra for him. But because it is imperfect, it turns his appearance into like that of a toad. This is why he probably hasn't showed it to you. He will only use it in a situation of life and death, Fukasaku said. However, if you perfect it, you won't turn like a toad and you won't need our help. Naruto nodded. Is there a limit? It is chakra, there is no time limit, but how long you keep the mode depends on how much chakra you use. If you use it all, you will lose it. If you lose it in battle, gathering energy will be near possible because you'd have to be calm to absorb it. Naruto was silent before asking. Is there a limit of how much chakra I can gather? Can I absorb much more chakra than I have? The limit is how much chakra you can absorb. Aside from having the risks of turning into a toad, you can absorb as much as you want, as long as you can control it. I assume that I can also store it in my body if I develop a proper method. If I do that, I'm safe from running out of power while in battle. But we don't have that method, do we? Fukasaku shook his head. Since there is no end to natural energy, you don't have to worry much about it, Fukasaku said before he smiled. You have asked more questions than your father, he said. Minato? He was here? Fukasaku nodded. But because of his duties as Hokage, he didn't have much time to train and perfect it. And he died before he could. I hope you'll surpass both him and Jiraiya-chan. Naturally. Uzushio. Guran couldn't help but admire the genius that was the man who sent this assassin to the whirlpools. You couldn't tell where the man came from just by looking at him. He looked like a normal civilian, but he was not. He was a trained killer who didn't have a problem in trying to blow himself up. It was like he had been ordered, the moment they were caught, activate the seal and die to avoid being questioned. Most of her captives usually swallow their tongues to avoid talking, but this one didn't try that. He had tried to blow himself up. But this was Uzushio Gakure. They had stopped him before could do so, but talking seemed impossible. He simply could not answer certain questions because of the seal inside of him. The seal had been removed, Guran tortured him, and he still refused to talk. The man didn't scream or cry out in pain. And she had learned her trade from Orochimaru. When she failed to get any information, she had gone straight to the leader's tower and found the man sitting with Haku. The two seemed to get along well. She had never questioned it. She was mostly doing the dirty work, which she realized Haku could not do because he was a kind-hearted person. She snorted at the thought. She didn't usually like people like that, but Haku was fine, they were comrades after all. The leader was a tall man with clear blue eyes, long crimson hair. He was usually smiling, his face was a bit flat, with large cheeks. But those eyes could switch from warmth to coldness in the blink of an eye. 1 second he was as cold as Haku's ice, and the second he could be generating the same heat as lava. Guran-san, Yoshino said in a light tone. You look frustrated. I am. Guran admitted. The man always spoke in a smooth tone. Guran noticed, he was truly a man who was polite and pleasant to have a conversation with, but he was still a frightening person. It was no wonder he held the position of leader. There were many personalities in this land, and a weak person could not control everyone. People listened to him when he spoke. He commanded respect. He won't talk. He is prepared to die before he says anything. Yoshino nodded. But you are positive he is an assassin, yes? Guran nodded. You can dispose of him. There is no need to apply any measures on him to make him talk. If the person is unwilling to talk and we apply strict measures, he will die, Yoshino stated calmly. The mark on his tongue, we can work with it and inquire where it comes from. If we discover that, then we know who sent him. Should I start digging? Yoshino shook his head. That will be for another unit to do. He paused for a moment, thinking. On second thought, keep him alive. We don't know what we might discover if we search. Maybe he might be willing to talk if he has the truth in front of him. Any suspicions on who could want to kill His Majesty? Haku asked. Spies from other villages have only been trying to find information, but they have never come for the kill, Guran said with a shake of her head. I can't figure out who would try something like that. We can rule out the smaller villages, Suna and Kiri. I doubt Kumo would try assassination attempts. The Yondaime Reikage is a little proud. And his moves aggressively not so subtle like this. It will be either Konoha or Iwagakure. Yoshino responded quietly. I can understand Iwagakure, but why Konoha? Every village has its darkness, Guran-san. You should know that the Hidden Leaf has done many things that are not so much what it preaches. There is a certain man named Danzo who moves even without the approval of the Hokage. He could have done this without the God I'm Hokage knowing. If it's such the case, then we won't be taking any action until His Majesty is made aware of it. The village was run differently. The man who sits at the top of the village, the Emperor, wasn't involved in everything. This man, Yoshino, ran the village and commanded even the Jonins around the village. However, the Black Corps, which she ran, were only supposed to report to the Emperor. Because of his absence, she usually reported to this man. If you need help with pursuing this, you will let me know. Yoshino smiled, as always, he said. Guran looked at that smile and shook her head. She left without saying another word. Once she was gone, Haku tuned to Yoshino. You really found a dependable person, he said of Guran. Well, she was once Orochimaru's number 2 and she knew a lot of things he knew. We had to get that information from her, Yoshino said. I am glad we came across her on the hunt. She has freed our time to focus on other things. A month later. A month-long time, and he hadn't come here at once. He hadn't even bothered trying to check in on how Naruto was doing in his training. For the first time since they started their journey, Jiraiya hadn't worried about Naruto. He hadn't worried about anything because Naruto was in a safe place. Nothing could possibly go wrong here. So he had moved around in peace and the quietness of long nights, observing things while keeping in contact with his network to gain information about the happenings of the elemental nations. Naruto was a person who worked fast, so he had thought there would be some progress with the training. When he was reserve summoned to the land of the toads, Fukasaku took him to a secluded place wearing a rather serious look on his face. He didn't joke around, but the look informed the Sannin that something was bothering the sage. Naruto didn't turn into a toad, did he? Jiraiya asked with concern. Well, the blonde had a tendency to train on his own. It wouldn't surprise him if he somehow went off to train on his own and ended up being petrified. That would be a disaster. Tsunade would kill him and Kushina would certainly mutilate him if he sees her in the world of the dead. Naruto could not go in such a way. Even if he was going, the blonde would have to die after him. He could not bury another student. Jiraiya could not survive that. He had mourned Minato, he would not mourn Naruto as well. Fukasaku slowly shook his head. Nothing like that happened. Do you think we'd let something like that happen to Minato's son? You wouldn't have allowed it to happen, but sometimes things you have no control over do happen, Jiraiya said in a serious tone. If nothing bad happened to Naruto, what is wrong? How did the training even go? Naruto had been an excellent student. He listened when someone was telling him something. He asked questions when he didn't understand something. When you told him to rest for the day, he would do it. He was truly the best student Fukasaku has ever had. It wasn't just that, but his ability to understand what he was being told and his fondness of nature made it suitable for him to learn Senjutsu. He learned quickly and he grasped the methods he was taught quickly. In no time Naruto was able to gather natural energy and absorb it into his own body. He was able to attain a perfect sage mode. He had done what Jiraiya had failed to do, and in a short period of time. Fukasaku should be happy. Naruto was even well-mannered. He appeared to be a child who behaved. You wouldn't think that he was learning from Jiraiya. Yet, Fukasaku was concerned. The training went perfectly, Fukasaku said. Naruto mastered Sage Mode and he has been training to get a better handle of it and absorbing more chakra than he has. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Isn't that too dangerous? If you can't control the flow of chakra, but there must always be a balance of chakra. He achieves this by adding a bit of the Kyuubi's chakra, Fukasaku said. I didn't think it possible, but he is doing it, he said with a shake of his head. The brat did it, Jiraiya said. I'm not going to hear the end of it, he mumbled. You just don't want to learn. If you had given it more time, you would have perfected yours already, Fukasaku said. It is too late for me, sensei, Jiraiya said in a resigned tone. If Naruto has done everything right, what is wrong? Fukasaku stared at Jiraiya for a long moment before asking. What do you know about Naruto-chan, Jiraiya? Huh? Jiraiya blinked in surprise at the question. What was that supposed to mean? He has been Naruto's sensei and the blonde was Minato's son. What was there more than he didn't know? Naruto-chan isn't like his father, is he? Jiraiya shook his head. Given everything, I didn't expect him to be like his father. There is a certain limit to how much hate you can take in. Naruto isn't like his father and he isn't like me. He is different from both his parents. I can't tell what he inherited from both of them. Minato had been a genius, but Naruto wasn't a genius. Kushina was a strong-willed woman who was full of kindness and warmth. Though, she could turn violent at any moment. Even so, she had been a good person. Naruto was like neither. He didn't have their vision, he didn't have their eyes. The hair was the same with his father and so was the color of his eyes, but Naruto's eyes were different. You couldn't tell what was in them. I discovered that, Fukasaku said. I can't tell if he is hot or cold, Jiraiya-chan. He has the concentration never seen in a human. I think it is impossible for a human to be as concentrated as he can be. This very ground can be shaking with explosions occurring left and right, toads screaming in despair, and he can still just stand still, eyes closed and have sweet dreams. Aren't you taking it a little too far? Jiraiya asked. But he knew just how much Naruto could focus on something. He had seen it after all. The blonde could stand still for hours. Sometimes, regardless of how raging the battlefield was, you could miss the sound of his heartbeat, his breathing. Fukasaku shook his head. That is the truth, Jiraiya-chan, he said. It isn't necessarily a bad thing, but Naruto-chan makes us nervous because we don't know what he is thinking. It is troubling given the revival of the Uzumaki clan. This revival is going to change the ninja world, Jiraiya-chan. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. What do you mean by that? I can feel it, the elemental nations are heading into a different path. I don't know whether it will be good or bad, but the Honorable Geezer says the Uzumaki will be the cause of this great change, Fukasaku said. Not this again. Already the revival of the Uzumaki clan has made other people take measures that worried him and could lead to war. But this just meant that there was more to the Uzumaki. They could be much more dangerous than he thought or anyone thought they were. The village itself looked normal. But they could still be hiding something. Well, that was a possibility. They were keeping themselves locked up in their land. They were planning something. And Naruto was going to be involved, simply because he was Uzumaki. Perhaps it was time they faced the fact. If Naruto wanted to go, he would go. Perhaps he shouldn't have easily accepted the reasons the blonde gave him when he asked about the issue the other day. But it had made sense. Jiraiya had reasoned and found that Naruto made sense. It was like him, he always reasoned sensibly. We are not saying Naruto is bad, Jiraiya-chan, Fukasaku said. The Sannin nodded. You said he is neither hot nor cold, which means he could turn to any other side, and it is my responsibility to ensure that the path is one that we will still wish to be associated with. Yes, Fukasaku said. Other than that, he is good, respectful. Respectful my ass, Jiraiya exclaimed. That brat doesn't show me any ounce of respect. Fukasaku smiled. Naruto does respect you, Jiraiya-chan, he said. He is currently meditating by the waterfall. Jiraiya nodded and turned away from Fukasaku. He walked for a couple of moments before finally reaching the area. The air felt heavy. It wasn't natural. He figured it was Naruto's doing. The blonde had his eyes closed, meditating. The child of prophecy, he had been told he would train someone who would have the power to save or destroy the world. He had thought it would be Nagato, but Nagato died. He had thought it would be Minato, but he too died. And now there was Naruto. Was he going to end up getting another student? Jiraiya didn't think so. Naruto had to be the child of prophecy. But what could he do? He had done right by Naruto. He had shown him the world and what it was. At this point, he believed that Naruto understood the world better. But even now, he still couldn't get the blonde to answer him on what he wanted to do to change this world he felt was rotten and controlled by those who were greedy. He had to demand answers now. But he would have to be careful not to push Naruto away. Could the blonde bring destruction? Jiraiya couldn't say. He couldn't say Naruto could do it or could not. He didn't know the deeper thoughts of his own student. Wind blasted all around, hitting Jiraiya, but he remained grounded. It just succeeded in snapping him out of his thoughts. Naruto was staring at him with a sharp look. You know, for a moment I thought you were deciding on whether you should kill me or let me live, Naruto said. I doubt you'd let me get that close, Jiraiya said in a flat tone. I heard you succeeded, he said with a smile. Naruto nodded. Yes. Natural energy is truly special. I love it. I'm proud of you, Jiraiya said with a grin. We can go to celebrate once we leave this place. A celebration with you, sensei? Why does that give me the chills? You worry too much. Jiraiya shrugged his shoulders carelessly. So what do you say? We are going to sow it in the Fire Nation. Hanzaku guy. There are some good spots there. Naruto sighed. If you are paying, I can't complain. The blonde said. I haven't had a drop of alcohol since I came here and I really miss a steak. If we could, I'd just head to Konoha just to get a couple of ramen bowls and devour them. What are you complaining about? You look healthy. First day I had to eat with my eyes closed, you perverted sensei. Although, the food does taste good than it looks, Naruto responded as he got up. I wonder how the world of humans will smell like when we finally get there, he said in thought. 2 weeks later, Tanzaku. Kurenai was walking with her team through the town of Tanzaku-gai. Kiba was bickering about something that happened during their successful mission. Then again, he was always very vocal about his thoughts. He wasn't the one to let things slide just like that without having a few words of his own to say. It did cause some problems for them when he could not keep his head down during tense times. He really needed to get a grip of his emotions at the crucial times or it would cost them dearly one day. Nothing has happened so far. They were a team, so when they moved, they always accounted for Kiba's behavior. That aside, they always had each other's back, so that helped during crucial times. Her team had grown nevertheless. Hinata and Kiba hadn't performed that well in their matches when they first took part of the Chunin exams, but they had done better in the next one. Perhaps it was because they had been better prepared. Kakashi's team and Guy's team had been the one with top students. I'm telling you, Shino, I had it under control. Kiba grumbled towards the glass-wearing shinobi. I didn't look that way to me. Why? Because you were getting beat. I was just trying to see what he could do, Kiba exclaimed a bit loudly. He was honestly annoyed about the fact that Shino had to come to his rescue. At this point, he was the weakest one in the team. It frustrated him because no matter what he did he couldn't surpass Shino. He wasn't worried about Hinata on that level, but Shino always beat him each time they sparred. "You seem to do that a bit often," Shino noted. Hinata giggled lightly. "Just admit it, Kiba-kun," she said. It always amused her when her teammate tried to play tough. Sometimes even when he was hurt, he would say he wasn't hurt just to put on a brave face. A man always has to be strong in front of a woman, huh? But did that apply for shinobi? Gender was irrelevant to the shinobi world when it does come to power. Kiba mumbled something under his breath. Kurenai sighed. She did wonder if Hinata knew that the boy always acted strong because he wanted to impress her. For Kiba's clan, being the alpha male was the most important thing and the method of winning the female. The weak were devoured. It was like a pack of wolves. The alpha male dominated. But Kiba didn't have the strength. He had the desire and attitude, but strength failed him when it mattered. Perhaps it had to do with a bit of his arrogance as well. "Kiba, you remain the weakest link," Kurenai said. Not the words she would usually say, but he needed to hear it. They were heading towards a path of war. Konoha was preparing for the worst possible scenario, and if her students were going to survive, she needed for them to be strong. Kindness wasn't really going to make them live, was it? "Kurenai-sensei?" Kiba looked shocked hearing those words. The ruby-eyed genjutsu mistress smiled, a bit sadly. "I'm sorry I had to say it, but you are not going to improve if nothing changes. I will have to speak to either Guy or Kakashi about teaching you taijutsu. You also need to learn to control your emotions," she said the last words with a stare. "Anyone but Guy, sensei." "Why?" Kurenai asked. He was eccentric and perhaps way hyperactive, but he was still a better jonin and very powerful. He might not use ninjutsu and his behavior might make many frown, but there was no jonin who has witnessed him fight who doesn't respect him. "Well, he is Guy-sensei," Kiba said. It was enough that he had to deal with Lee, he didn't need to deal with Might Guy as well. "I would rather have Kakashi-sensei." Kakashi was a lazy jonin, Kurenai wanted to say. She doubted he would even agree. Then again, this was one of those times. He could be serious. She heard that he was training these days. So, maybe things were different. "You do know that neither you nor Shino have been able to defeat Lee, right?" "You don't need to remind me, sensei." Kurenai shook her head and looked up ahead of them. She saw shoulder-length blonde hair. It was wild as if it wasn't combed. There was the familiar swirl inside a circle on the back of the crimson long-sleeved shirt the person was wearing. The presence, it felt somewhat similar. For a moment, she would have thought she was staring at the back of the Yondaime Hokage. "Naruto-kun?" Kurenai glanced towards Hinata, the girl had said in a whisper, staring a bit wide-eyed to the person in front of them, who had his back on them, walking slowly with his hands on his pockets. Of course, she would be quick to recognize him. She seemed to know him better. The genjutsu mistress looked ahead once more. The Uzumaki symbol, he'd always worn the mark in each of the clothes she saw him wearing in the leaf, wasn't it? Well, there was no doubt he was from the clan. Then again, she hadn't thought much of the clan before they were called by the Hokage to discuss the clan's revival and what it meant to the shinobi world. He was from that clan, and he was in front of them, wearing the clan symbol. Having heard Hinata with his keen sense of hearing, Kiba rushed forward. He stretched out his right hand to grab the blonde by his shoulders, but the chunin found himself being lifted up into the air. He watched with surprise as his view turned upside down before he hit the ground on his back. "What the hell, Naruto?" Kiba shouted. Naruto didn't look at the Inuzuka, he glanced back through the corner of his eyes and frowned. He had been curious to know why Jiraiya chose this town, and now he knew. The Sannin had known he would meet Konoha shinobi. Not just any shinobi, but ones he had a history with. If the man really wanted for them to go to Amigakure, they would have traveled somewhere a bit closer to the storm. The blonde glanced down at the Inuzuka, who was getting up. Kiba dusted himself up before glaring at Naruto. "No need to look at me like that," Naruto said with a shrug. "You should know that you can't sneak on a shinobi from behind." "I'm your friend." Naruto shrugged. "I wasn't expecting friends," he said before twisting around to face the rest of the gang. He smiled brilliantly as he greeted them. "Shino, Hinata." He eyed the genjutsu mistress for a moment before greeting her. "And the delightful Kurenai-sensei." He wanted to say it was very convenient to see them, but he stopped short of saying those words. It wasn't convenient. Hardly anything was convenient in this world. Kurenai blinked at the greeting. Had he been always like this? She shook her head. She didn't have many interactions with him. She'd always watched from afar, but he hadn't been like this. Admittedly, he had grown and he had a presence about him. He had become quite the handsome young man. Naruto Uzumaki. She hadn't seen him in close to 3 years in Konoha. What was he doing here? Are you on your way back to Konoha? Naruto shook his head. I have been in this town for about 2 weeks now, he said. Just taking a breather for some training I was doing before heading out for something else, Naruto said kindly. Coming from a mission? Kurenai nodded. Are you alone? No, he said, but didn't say who he was with. It was nice seeing y'all. Wait, Kiba said before Naruto could walk away. When are you coming back? Naruto adopted a thoughtful look on his face before responding. Very soon, he said. Very soon. He repeated those words with a nod of his head. He waved his right hand with his back turned on the team before disappearing from the view. He completely disappeared. Kiba muttered. Wasn't expecting to see us, Kurenai said calmly. Come on, we shouldn't linger around here. We have to go back to Konoha. She began to move ahead. Later. Naruto would have to smack Jiraiya in the head for taking such measures just to get him to meet people from Konoha. It wasn't anything serious, and what did it achieve? Did he just want him to think, good lord, he misses home? What was it? Naruto couldn't understand. After thinking about it for a couple of moments, he decided he didn't need to understand it. Those people were going to tell other colleagues that they had seen him, and then people would be talking about him. Perhaps that was the main idea. Naruto really didn't care about it. He was currently sitting under a tree in a meditative pose, gathering natural energy. The process of trying to gather chakra while in battle would be a bit costing, so Naruto has been trying to test the limits of how much chakra he can absorb. Once he was done, he would find a way to create a seal that would allow him to store as much chakra as he could. 8 trigrams was able to contain the Kyuubi's chakra without any problem, and then he should be able to create a seal that can hold natural chakra. Minato's seal wasn't made to lock away the Kyuubi's power, but he had left a small path that allows the Baiju's power to pass through a gate. There were no limits to how much chakra the seal could contain, but there were limits to how much he could wield. A seal he would have to create would need to have 2 openings, but they could not be opened at the same time. If the absorption gate opened, the release gate would have to close. This would mean he could properly regulate chakra and avoid overload. But how did he go about it? The seal itself could not do the absorption. He had to do it and then open the gate to store the chakra within it. This would require extensive chakra control. How much he was able to push into the seal would depend on the size of the gate. It was a challenge, but Naruto already had the ideas, he just had to begin with the formula. What would he name it? 2-gate sealing method? No, he would be using the same basics of the trigram seal. 2-trigram sealing method? Perhaps that would do. He would still need to develop a method of release for it. Given the danger that was with natural energy, he would need to be careful with the release, because he could not release it all at once. He would need to keep a constant flow of the chakra. If he released enough to activate Sage Mode, he would have to close the seal. But that would leave him with the task of releasing it once more if he ran out of chakra. He needed to release it once, but still keep a constant flow of it that would mean had all the chakra available to him. Have you become my stalker, Itachi? Naruto asked without opening his eyes. The Uchiha was sitting on a tree branch just above him. No, you're a clone. Where is the original? Not anywhere close, Itachi said. I can tell, Naruto said. I have been looking for you from the past couple of weeks. Itachi started. This might perhaps be the last conversation we will have. Jiraiya is busy with something else, so we can talk freely. Don't you mean, you can talk? Naruto asked calmly. I can only indulge you, Itachi. You are the one who has something to say to me. I can only respond to what you have to say. Itachi was silent for a moment. He didn't argue with Naruto on his point. Last time you spoke about what was right and wrong. But it has come to my understanding that Konoha's people will never beg you for forgiveness. They just want to forget the past and move on into the future. That is something I have thought about, Naruto said. You don't have hatred in your eyes. I have looked deep into you. But even when you don't have deep hatred for what was done to you, I still cannot tell what you will do about it, Itachi said in a calm tone. If Konoha's people pretend that nothing happened, will you still not do anything to forgive the past actions? Who knows? Naruto said with a thoughtful look on his face. I have much bigger issues to think about than that. As you know, the shinobi world is heading into a dark path and I must prepare myself for it. And who is the cause of this tension? Naruto looked amused for a moment before responding. You are going to blame the revival of the Uzumaki clan on the tension. Perhaps you might as well say if they had remained dead, things would be fine. But I say, if they hadn't been attacked in the first place, none of this would be happening. We cannot blame the branches for not producing fruits, Itachi, We must look at the soil and see if it was being nurtured enough to provide what is necessary for the branches to produce. The root of the problem isn't that the Uzumaki have returned, but that they were destroyed. Itachi could not disagree with that, he would not. It would be irrational to put any other argument that would not even hold. Naruto was right in what he was saying. But perhaps what worried him was what he would do. You can determine a problem and still take the wrong path on trying to solve it. I have already told you that what was done to the Uzumaki was wrong. Itachi, you told your brother to hate you, to resent you, and then he was strong, he should come to face you. Sasuke is trying to gain power to get revenge for his clan, the clan that you massacred, and you set him up for that path. My clan was destroyed, and if I set up for revenge, you wouldn't argue it was wrong, would you? Because it would be nothing more than hypocrisy. If Sasuke kills me, it is just me and no one gets caught up in it. But if you are going after revenge, a lot of people die, this world is taken into another war. You have to look at the bigger picture. The picture for me would be that it would revenge. The only difference is that it didn't just one human to destroy my clan but great nations to do it, Naruto said in a firm tone. I have seen what hatred does, what revenge does to a person, Itachi. I don't like it. No doubt he was talking about his own experiences. He has been living through hatred most of his life. If there was someone who could define what hatred is, it would be Naruto. He had seen it in Konoha and he was hosting a Baijuu that was known as hatred. His former teammate had lost his way in his thirst for revenge, the greed for power. What do you think will happen if it comes clear that there were more parties involved in the Uchiha massacre? Do you think Sasuke will stop there? Of course he won't. He will do everything he can to destroy those who caused the downfall of his clan, Naruto stated in a firm tone. What is important to you, Itachi? Itachi knew. He was certain that if Sasuke learned of the truth, he would try to destroy Konoha. That was why he had asked Naruto if he would be willing to stop the Uchiha from doing so. Naruto was a capable shinobi. Konoha. I see, you value village over clan, Naruto said with a nod. Then what should I value, Itachi? The Uzumaki is more than just a clan. It is a village, my home. If I decided to leave Konoha, I'm certain that I would be able to live happily with my fellow clansmen, in our village. Would that be wrong? Itachi shook his head. No, he said. I just want to know what you really want to do, Naruto. As I speak with you, I begin to understand a bit more of how you reason things. But with how you reason, you should be with your people, your clan, but you are still with Konoha. Why? I can't understand that. What makes you say that? You are proud of being Uzumaki. And I find it highly unlikely that you have no connections with the clan. You have a connection with them. You would fight to protect them, even if it meant going against Konoha. But why are you not going there? Isn't it because I am a Konoha shinobi? For now, at least. I have no evil intentions, Itachi. If you are concerned about destruction, go to your brother before he delves further into darkness. If he does, there will be no one to save him, Naruto said. I am also not someone you should worry about because the actions of Iwa and Kumo should be what concerns you. Am I wrong? I will deal with Sasuke, soon, Itachi said. You have a good understanding of things, Naruto-kun. I am certain that you think deeply about your future. You are not stupid or arrogant. I wish we had grown around the same time. Perhaps we might have been friends. Itachi burst into a murder of crows after saying those words. Naruto sat still for a moment before shrugging his shoulders. He went back to focusing on his seal. Later that night, there was a small symbol of the Uzumaki, a kanji for chakra at the heart of it. At the top and base, there were two similar markings. The marking at the top was lying upside down and the one at the base lying flat. The drawings on the top read seal and at the base release. This was the work Jiraiya found when he returned late at night. It was drawn on a large sealing scroll, left open on a small table. Naruto always had a table in each room they rented, wasn't it? He had questioned Naruto's prowess in Fuinjutsu, but now he was seeing it. He had learned the art, so he could tell it was as a complex work that could regulate chakra. He stared at the seal for a couple of moments, trying to piece it together. It had 3 parts and they were all separated. Perhaps it wasn't a finished product but a work in progress. Are you sleeping? Jiraiya asked in a quiet tone. Naruto was sitting silently by the window with his eyes closed. I was before you woke me up with your presence. Naruto responded without looking at the Sannin. What is this? Something I was working on today. I'm trying to create a second storage of chakra to be used in case I deplete my chakra reserves. Naruto responded calmly. Do you need to worry about that? Naruto nodded. Some of my jutsus require massive amounts of chakra. My Rasen Shuriken has limited use because it demands too much chakra. In a situation where I have to fight a long battle, having more chakra will be important. Stamina I have. I can fight for longer periods, but stamina is nothing when you are out of chakra and your first fighting style is the use of ninjutsu. Things were going to get heated soon. Naruto could already see himself fighting large number of shinobi, and if things happen like that, he would need almost unlimited supply of chakra. Well, that is if a war occurs. With Kumo and Iwagakure lurking, anything could happen. Naruto wasn't going to take any chances because he had to be prepared for anything. Only those with strong minds and bodies could survive a war. Naruto wanted to survive. He wanted to live a long life worthy of someone with the Uzumaki blood. I know you said you studied almost everything about Fuinjutsu. I didn't think you were this good, Jiraiya said. And all this time you never said a damn thing. Naruto shrugged his shoulders in a careless manner. You should know me already now, Jiraiya-sensei. It was never convenient for me to use my Fuinjutsu skills. And I never pretended to be ignorant of it. This was just a subject we never really did discuss in details. Jiraiya sighed before settling down. He cast his glance towards the seal once more. It had been left there on purpose, just for him to see. He had said they would have to discuss the practical use of Fuinjutsu. What did he expect anyway? Naruto was a proud Uzumaki. What did the Uzumaki excel in? There was no doubt he was Uzumaki now. But what more could the blonde do with Fuinjutsu? He had obviously developed that from scratch. And that was no easy feat. Drawing a new formula was no easy thing to do. He had learned most of the seals he knew. Naruto has probably learned more about many seals than he has, since he has studied seals for many hours. I am going to be honest with you, Naruto, Jiraiya said in a serious tone. You shouldn't phrase your statement like that, sensei, Naruto said. You make it sound as if you have been lying all this time. And which isn't true. He paused and looked over at the Toad Sage. I figured this was going to come any time soon, he said. You figured? Naruto nodded before looking outside. The streets were dark. The sun was nowhere to be seen. The moon had its eyes closed tonight. When you came for me, the air around you felt tense when you were staring at me. I couldn't read anything from your mask. You are a professional at that. Jiraiya was silent for a couple of moments. Naruto hadn't even twitched to show him he thought there was something wrong. The blonde was truly another professional when it comes to schooling his reactions. It just spoke volumes to how calm and controlled he was. The toads told me something. I have told you about the prophecy the toads told me, right? Naruto nodded. Perhaps it was something that made him cautious about being near the toads. You did say something like that. You did say you once thought it could be my father. But that didn't end well. You also had another student. Nagato, Jiraiya said. He was Uzumaki and had the Rinnegan. The eyes once wielded by the legendary Sage of Six Paths. The Sage of Six Paths. That wasn't something Naruto thought much about. But the man did once exist in this world. Another story does state that he was truly a master of the sealing art. Perhaps the Uzumaki got this from him. Both the Senju and Uchiha were descendants of the sage, and they inherited his powers. Or so the powers of his sons. If you didn't know the history of both clans and their founding, you wouldn't know something like that. Uzumaki. Jiraiya smiled. The clan wasn't blessed with the dujutsu prowess of the Uchiha, and yet they were the danger. You know, there was once a time when there was a rule. If you meet a Sharingan wielder and you are alone, you don't face, you run away. The Sharingan is also powerful enough to cast Genjutsu to control a Baijuu. Yet, it wasn't the clan that was determined the most threat, but Uzumaki. There are just many things that we don't know about why they were destroyed, and we might never know. Perhaps, Naruto said. Some secrets have died with relics of the past. You might find that 50,000 people were involved, but only one of them knows the real truth of what actually happened. There is that possibility, Jiraiya said. I think that you might be the child of prophecy, Naruto. I think that you can bring change in this world. But whether it will be destruction or peace is another matter that nobody can determine. I really hope that if the prophecy is indeed true and I am correct, you will become a savior of the shinobi world, Naruto. Destruction. Oh yes, there were powers in this world that could cause so much destruction and death. It could just be pure chaos. One person could destroy even a village like Konoha with just one jutsu. Naruto had a clear idea on what he needed to do, but whether there was going to be peace or destruction would depend on how the elemental nations responded to him. He wasn't thinking about that for now. He was most concerned about what was in front of him. You have huge dreams, sensei, Naruto said. Naruto wasn't going to comment on his proclamation, Jiraiya realized. Before, he would have allowed the blonde to get away with it, but not this time. He wasn't going to do something like that. I want your response about what I just said, Naruto. Naruto looked at the Sannin for a couple of moments before looking away. That is something to think about. But it is really a frightening knowledge. I am not a kind-hearted person who is as idealistic as you are, sensei. Nevertheless, I heard what you have said. Perhaps it excites me more than it does frighten me. Either way, we will not know anything unless we truly live that reality. I have no thirst for destruction. And I'm still evaluating things. I will be watching you from now on, Naruto. More so than I did, Jiraiya said in a hardened tone. You are my student. Yes, you do not share my dreams, but it doesn't change anything. I don't know how you will involve yourself with the Uzumaki, but you'll probably play a huge role. As your sensei, it is my job to ensure that your role is good. Your role doesn't bring chaos and destruction in this world. You have the power of the Kyuubi, that isn't something even I can go against. Then I look forward to seeing what you are going to do, sensei, Naruto said with a small smile. What are we going to do? I said we would visit Amigakure. I never mentioned why, Jiraiya said. Amigakure was led by Hanzo, but we haven't heard anything about him. Given how strong he was, I doubt he is dead. The reign has nevertheless been under lockdown for a while. Its reputation with spies is as notorious as Uzushio. We are going to investigate to see is happening. I have also learned that the Akatsuki might be located there. I have also learned that there is a civil war in the village. It might the Akatsuki against Hanzo. What is the problem with the Akatsuki, Jiraiya? They are just a mercenary group, isn't it? Jiraiya nodded his head. That is true, but Orochimaru was once a member, and Itachi is currently a member. Who is able to control these powerful shinobi? The leader of the group must be a powerful shinobi. We don't know anything, hence we are going to investigate. I know the civil war is real, but if the Akatsuki is involved, it means a mercenary group is trying to take over a village. This will be my first spy thriller, Naruto said with a smile. When do we leave? You'll have to be careful, Naruto. Amigakure is dangerous. If we go there, we could be walking straight into a civil war, Jiraiya said. He hadn't been planning on taking Naruto with him, but with the blonde done with his training, he had to take him. That aside, Naruto knew how to hide his presence, he knew how to be subtle. And if something happened, the two of them could always handle it. Naruto had perfected Senjutsu. There shouldn't be problems the two of them couldn't handle. They would make a combo, wouldn't they? If they entered a battlefield in Sage mode, they would decimate their opponents. When have I been careless, sensei? Those words ran inside Jiraiya's head like a loud bell that left him dazed for a moment. Perhaps he had been right to think that Naruto would do well. The blonde was never careless. He certainly moved with the slickness of a snake. I sometimes forget those qualities you don't always show. You should pay attention to your student, Jiraiya, Naruto said sternly. What was it with Kurenai's team? Jiraiya grinned. I thought it would be a nice touch to remind you of home. We had been avoiding Konoha shinobi and never talked more about it. I just thought it would be nice if some of your friends saw you. You know, old feelings. Naruto shook his head. Don't be diabolical, sensei. You are already a shameless pervert, you need not add such a trait in your personality. Jiraiya shrugged indifferently. We leave tomorrow morning. The Sannin said. Be ready when I come. Sleeping elsewhere? Jiraiya merely smiled before he started to walk away. He stopped by the seal on the small table and stared at it for a long minute. After this mission, you'll need to show me more seals you know, he said in a serious tone. Konoha. When Danzo burst into her office, waking her from her nap, Tsunade was close to jumping on the man to crush him for disturbing her, but she quickly stopped from doing so. There had to be a reason he was in her office. She hadn't been seeing more of him in the past month because she had been busy tidying up things in the village and he had been busy running his show in the underground. The War Hawk had a rather serious look about him. It was a stern look. Perhaps it was something that she had used to doing, but this one looked different. What is it, Danzo? Danzo stared at the woman for a moment. It wasn't easy working for her. But he was managing. He hasn't been doing anything that would warrant her attention, but he was just being careful. There was no need to do anything now. Patience has always been his friend and he would be patient. He would strike when the time was right. He wouldn't be afraid if she failed with Uzushio and Iwagakure. He could pick up the pieces. But the fact that she wasn't glaring at him meant that Uzushio Gakure didn't inform her that it caught his people who had a mission to assassinate their leader. It had been a risk worth taking. If he had managed to kill the leader of Uzu and leak this to Iwagakure and Kumo, He could have plotted things wonderfully and Konoha would watch the chaos occur before pouncing. Yet, the fact that Uzushio didn't say anything to Tsunade was a little troubling. He was dealing with devious people. Well, it was better that the Godime didn't know. He was safe as long as she didn't know. But Uzu wouldn't try to use this information to blackmail him, would it? If something happened, this woman would no doubt send her shinobi after him and it would not be pretty. At this point, he was even considering using Shisui's eye on her. I have just received a report that Sasuke has left Orochimaru, Danzo said. What? He left Orochimaru and was seen into the Fire Nation. We don't know where he ended up going, but he is possibly looking for Itachi, Danzo said. It would be troublesome if Itachi comes across the younger Uchiha and says something. No, the Uchiha knew his duty to the village. He wouldn't dare say anything to Sasuke. With how emotional the young Uchiha was, he would no doubt try to attack Konoha. With how the elder Uchiha loved the leaf, it was unlikely he would do anything that would lead to such an action. Tsunade stared at the war hawk for a moment. Sakura had been right. This was happening, but where was he going? Did he think that he was now powerful enough to defeat his elder brother? What about Orochimaru? I don't know if he is alive or dead. Though, it would be best if he was dead. Orochimaru was a liability to the leaf and to him. His continued existence was nothing more than a ticking time bomb. I want something more than that, Danzo, Tsunade said in a firm. Go confirm it. If he is indeed dead, I want his head before me. If you can't bring his head, get me something I can work on. If he is still alive, confirm it. There is still Kabuto to think about. Where is he? I will have to look for that. Then get to it. Tsunade ordered in a hardened tone. I want results soon. Danzo didn't respond to being ordered like that. He could permit it, for now. He had patience to deal with this. For now, but the day would come. She would either be dead or kneel before him and beg for him to spare her life. We have not discussed Sasuke. What of him? If possible, it would be best that he not even meet with Itachi. We have a better chance of catching him since he isn't under the protection of Orochimaru. Danzo said those words in a stern tone. Do you have his exact location or general location? Tsunade asked. No. Then go find it, and when you do, come back to me and we will discuss what needs to be done. I will be more than happy to send my top shinobi after both him and Itachi, Tsunade said. He would not allow that to happen. Danzo would make sure that Itachi was dead before he arrived in the Hidden Leaf. There was a chance of talking if he arrived back in the leaf. They had not even been actively pursuing him because they had let him leave the village after serving it. A truly noble act, as one should expect from a true shinobi of the Hidden Leaf. You still haven't given me a clear answer on whether you will give Sasuke to me or not, Danzo said. Since we have a clear chance of getting him back, we need to settle the issue. Tsunade looked thoughtful for a moment. Whether she gave Sasuke to Danzo would depend on a couple of things. She was going to conduct a psychological evaluation on the Uchiha to determine if he needed to be sent into a cage and given strict lessons by Anbu. It would be a good mental exercise that should teach him better emotional control. Speaking of evaluations, she needed to order Shikaku to have them performed for every active shinobi to determine their state of mind. She didn't want loose cannons in a situation like this. Tsunade would really not want to deal with Sasuke. It would be good if he was with Danzo. But there were risks contained there. Nevertheless, she could do without the headache. I provisionally give you my approval to handle him. However, after some time, I will call him back, determine his state of mind and see if he can get back under my control. That is acceptable. Good, Tsunade said. Now go find him and Itachi. There is still one more issue, Danzo said. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. What? I have to first congratulate you on implementing changes to the Shinobi Academy and approving tough guidelines on how Jonins train their students. While it is not enough, it is still a start, and at a time like this it is needed. Of course, we would have never come to this point if Hiruzen had bothered listening to me, Danzo said. Tsunade stared at the war hawk for a moment before sighing. Receiving praise from Danzo was nothing good. She didn't need it from him. Those words felt a bit disgusting. But she didn't show it. Then? We need to do something about both Kumo and Iwa, Danzo said. We cannot simply allow them to form a partnership in this situation. It would prove to be a problem for our survival. We need to ensure that they never become allies. If you approve it, I have the necessary methods to make sure that they fight each other. Tsunade frowned. It was always something dark with Danzo. There was just no way Tsunade was going to go under that path. Even her grandfather would be ashamed. They needed to survive this. And indeed, if Kumo and Iwa rallied against them, It would prove to be a challenge they might not be able to overcome, but going dark like that? Never. Konoha has already done many dark things, she would not do this. I am not giving you my approval and you will not do it, Tsunade said firmly. If I hear that there is something happening between the two, Ibiki and Inoiki will have a couple of words with you. Predictable, Danzo said before walking away from the office. He had known she would give a response like that. He was hardly surprised, but for Konoha's survival, Danzo would do anything in his power to protect it. He would make sure that the Leaf survived this mess. He would not allow a naive woman who allows her emotions to get the best of her to drag this village down with her. Danzo blamed Hiruzen for this mess. These people were following his former teammates' teaching and it was dragging this once great nation down. Amigakure. Naruto looked down at the toad that had sneaked him into the rain through the large lake that surrounded the village. You entered the village through a bridge but that didn't accept visitors. And so, they had been swallowed by small toads and then dived into the water. They were now out and into the raining village. Naruto didn't look around, he didn't run for cover as Jiraiya did. The Sannin had quickly made his way out of the rain to look for shelter but Naruto stood still, looking up into the clouds with his right hand held up, waiting for the raindrops to hit him. He closed his eyes and felt the drops hit his body. It wasn't the kind of rain that made you wet in a second. Hey, what are you doing standing there? Jiraiya said to Naruto. There was no one around here, and so they were safe. But he didn't want Naruto standing in the rain like that as if he was a child. Naruto didn't respond immediately. After a minute or so, he walked over to the Sannin, who was giving him a questioning look. Long ago when the orphanage stopped being my home, when it rained, I could freely cry without anyone noticing I was indeed crying. I was just remembering those cold and miserable moments. Why remember something like that now? Jiraiya asked. Naruto shrugged. You know I am rather sentimental, sensei, he said carelessly. Jiraiya shook his head. He knew that, but it didn't make it okay sometimes. Sometimes Naruto did things that were like rituals. They were here for an important mission and they didn't need to do anything that would give them away. He was ready to fight, but if he could avoid it, he would do so. This isn't going to affect you, yes? Naruto glanced over at the Sannin, asking if he was making a joke or not. He didn't even bother responding, he merely transformed into a different person. The elder Toad Sage did the same and they started to slowly walk into the rain. Amigakure is truly locked up, isn't it? There was just no way of entering the village without sneaking in as they did. There was always rain, so entering the village through aerial means might prove to be a little difficult for many people. Well, it wasn't that people had the means to travel through the air. Perhaps that was why most shinobi villages were not prepared for such assaults. Perhaps the Sky Nation was once feared because of their ability to bomb nations by flying over them. Jiraiya looked around for a moment. It wasn't always like this. This place could be easily accessible by shinobi and in all the past wars, it had been used as a battleground by Konoha and Iwagakure. Hanzo would always have to join the battles to make sure that the battles didn't affect his village. He'd never liked the Kijas and he had killed all shinobi who faced him. Locking in Amigakure had been his way of ensuring the village survived. Hanzo started the rule because the land was used as a battleground. We ended up fighting him because we were also fighting in this land. Naruto looked up for a moment. This village. Shinobi nations use it for their wars. How despicable. How selfish and rotten for these nations. They didn't fight their wars in their own lands. They fought in other people's lands. Whenever there is a war, smaller nations are the ones who have to suffer. They always suffer. Horny shinobi take over their homes. Their lands are destroyed as shinobi battle it out to their deaths. There was always massive destruction. Amigakure has never done anything to ignite war, even if it hasn't been an enemy of any of the great nations, it still wouldn't have been spared from the destruction. When giants fight, it is the land that suffers. For the small creatures to survive, they have to become giants themselves. Sannins, Naruto said. Hanzo was that powerful, huh? Yet, it didn't stop the great nations from using this country as a battleground. You simply didn't care about smaller nations. It was better them than you. Jiraiya wasn't going to deny that past actions had been unjust, even by Konoha. But no matter how evil Konoha was, it was still his home and he would defend it. He would not look at what other villages have done. Certainly, none of their enemies were innocent. They were just as corrupt as the Hidden Leaf. Maybe I felt pity for the orphans because I did realize that it was our actions that had brought them to the state. Nagato's parents were killed by Leaf Shinobi and he became an orphan. He was still a young boy and had to steal food to survive. Jiraiya smiled sadly as the memories of his students flashed through his mind. They were all innocent children who had just been caught in our wars. You saved 3, Jiraiya. Naruto started. What do you think the others grew up believing? You know, it is one of those things that make children grow up hating you. You always speak about the cycle of hatred, but when great nations fight and crush those beneath them in the process, do you not think the small nations feel aggrieved and learn to hate? That is what happens, Jiraiya said with a shake of his head. They were different though. They were kind and loving children. I taught them how to live and they became good people who fought for peace. That just proves to you that not everyone gets tangled up in the path of darkness. If you have guidance, Sensei, Naruto said. What are we looking for around this village? You said it was supposed to be locked up and in some civil war, but everything looks fine now. Jiraiya frowned. This had worried him the moment he saw the village. But he knew there had been a civil war. It just means that the civil war ended with how locked down the village was, nobody was told about it. And they haven't made any movements that showed that Hanzo was dead. In fact, they'd been acting as if he was still alive. This made the situation worrying. Perhaps he was still alive. He really should have asked Danzo about this. He knew the two were connected. We have to find out what happened after the civil war, when it ended and who is in charge of the village now. Once we are done, we can see what we have before deciding if we should meet the leader. If Hanzo is still alive, we can go see him. He shouldn't be hostile towards me. Even if he is, I am sure we can handle the situation. Well, you are no longer the same person you were when he defeated you, Naruto said in thought. What time do we rendezvous and where? Let's keep walking, Jiraiya said. I never said I would be allowing you to go alone. Naruto shrugged. It wouldn't be so much of a learning experience for me if I am with you. Besides, it will be more effective if we go our separate ways. He paused and glared at the man. Don't speak as if you hadn't suggested we would be going separately. Jiraiya merely smiled. They finally found bar. It wasn't crowded but there were people around. They didn't enter. We will meet here in about 3 hours. If you're late by 30 minutes, I'm searching for you, but in case you were just running late and don't find me, I will leave instructions. Naruto nodded. You are going to start here? The Sannin nodded. Naruto peeked inside. I don't see any woman you'd want to charm, he said. Jiraiya didn't bother responding to Naruto, he merely stepped into the bar. Naruto shook his head and looked around for a moment before both his hands slipped into his pockets and he slowly started to walk away from the bar. Pain's Tower. Nagato looked through the rain with the Rinnegan as he felt disturbances in the rain. He stopped his jutsu and turned around to face Konoha. His longtime friend and partner stared at him curiously before asking. Is something wrong? There is an intruder and a guest, he said. Intruder, Konan said. They usually killed those without asking too many questions. Is he powerful? She asked. Nagato nodded his head. Yes, he said. Go deal with it. I will go to welcome our guest. Konan inquired about the general location before heading out. Nagato took the other way to find another person who has managed to infiltrate his village. When was the last time he even stepped out of the tower like this? Ever since he stopped using the mechanical walker, he had yet to step out but just moved around the tower. With Jiraiya. Ridiculous, you look away for a moment and the man who once fought the Sandaime's students is dead and everyone in his clan is systematically erased from the face of this world. It was perhaps a good method to gain control and keep someone from rising up to challenge you. But it was a brutal method, a cold-hearted move that would only please the likes of Danzo. That aside, Pain seemed to be a good leader to his people. They spoke wonderfully about him and they actually worshipped him for his power. The more Jiraiya heard from the people, the more he became curious about the mysterious leader. The people here didn't know about the Akatsuki and they didn't appear fond of the great nations, he could understand that. Nevertheless, there was something that makes him uncomfortable, it was the militarization of this village. Omigakure wasn't supposed to have strong shinobi. But since he started his search, Jiraiya had come to realize, Omigakure has been under a heavy method of increasing its strength over the past years. He couldn't determine its strength, but it wasn't the same village that was once led by Hanzo. The man who took over here certainly has an idea. It wasn't suffering. Everything looked in order. But the way the people spoke about their leader made him curious. He wanted to meet him. But he still needed to first see Naruto, they would go together. Jiraiya came to a halt when he saw a woman flying over, wings flapped behind her. She looked like an angel. He grinned, seeing that she was ready to fight. So, you are the angel, he said. He looked at the woman who was stone-faced. An image flashed into his mind and he gawked, he was seeing a ghost. Konan? The Toad Sage undid his henge. Konan looked at her former sensei for a moment as she considered what to do about this man. What was happening in this village wasn't supposed to be known by an outsider. They risked invasion if people from the outside knew about them. They didn't want to start trouble now, and they had been willing to kill anyone who threatened their secrets in any other way. Jiraiya. Sensei. Konan acknowledged the man. She didn't get down. She was still deciding if she should kill him or just let it slide. She sighed inwardly and dropped to the ground. The moment she landed, Jiraiya was upon her, his eyes wide. "It is really you, Konan," he said, filled with happiness. "You have truly grown into a fine woman," he added with a perverted grin. Konan didn't share Jiraiya's happiness. She simply stared at him. "Why are you here, Jiraiya-sensei?" It took a moment for Jiraiya to get hold of himself. He was finally happy to know that his student was alive. He had thought they were dead. But she was standing here, looking alive. He didn't even notice that she was wearing the same cloak as Itachi, the red clouds of the Akatsuki. When it finally dawned on him, he took a step back. "What is happening here, Konan?" Jiraiya demanded with narrowed eyes. "I should be asking you the same question. You infiltrated this village. I came here because I'm looking for information. I didn't think I would end up seeing people who were supposed to be dead. I see now that the story of your death was false and massively exaggerated. Are both Yahiko and Nagato still alive?" Konan did not answer the question. "I would rather you leave the village, Jiraiya. We do not take kindly to intruders." This wasn't going so well. He didn't think that he would meet his students like this, and the hostility. If Nagato was the one who was behind Hanzo's death, what did it mean? Did it mean he was the leader of this village? What did it say about the child of prophecy if Nagato was still alive? He too was Uzumaki. This just changed everything. It was a confusing situation. "Last time we spoke, I was crying because I was going to miss you, Konan. Is this how you greet me now after all these years?" Konan was silent for a couple of moments. She then turned around and started walking away from the Sanin without saying a word. Jiraiya followed her. He attempted to ask questions, but she didn't budge. She didn't twitch. She didn't say a damn word to him. Even when he made a lewd comment to try to get a reaction, she ignored his comments. She led him towards the tallest tower. When he arrived, he saw Naruto sitting by the balcony, in his favorite pose. The blonde turned towards him. "Oh, sensei, you got caught too," he said casually before looking away once more. Jiraiya hurried over to the blonde, leaving Konan behind. Naruto looked fine. He was just sitting as he would when sitting by the window. He wondered, what would happen when they head back to Konoha? Would they be fighting for the window? That was his spot, he would fight for it. "I'd even forgotten about you when I saw Konan," the Toad Sage admitted. "But I'm glad you are fine." "I don't think we are fine though, if her reception is anything to go by. She is one of my former students, but I think depending on what we say to them, we might not leave freely," he whispered into Naruto's ear. "No kidding," Naruto said. If Jiraiya wasn't used to Naruto's indifference, he would have been frowning now. But he was used to it. He didn't respond but merely turned around. He saw Nagato standing there next to Konan. The Rinnegan. He looked between his students and then Nagato once more. He was now a man. He had once believed this was the child of prophecy. He was supposed to be dead, but he was very much alive. "Jiraiya-sensei." Nagato started without emotion. "I didn't expect to see you so soon. What brought you here?" This was not the same Nagato he knew. This was not the same child he had trained. Nagato was strong. If he had defeated Hanzo, it meant that much. But it was still something that the kind-hearted person he had trained would massacre everyone who was connected to Hanzo just to strengthen his grip on power. The Nagato he knew wouldn't do something like that. This made Jiraiya stiffen. They were both different. Both? There should be three of them. "If you two are alive, where is Yahiko?" There was no reaction from the two that gave anything away. They just stood there, unflinching before Nagato spoke. "You have not answered my question, Jiraiya-sensei." Jiraiya knew, things were not going to go smoothly if he did not respond to the question. He could see that they were prepared for anything. He glanced at Naruto, his eyes were cast outside, but still ready to jump in if anything happens. He smiled. He could always count on the blonde. "Last time I heard this village was in a civil war. I also heard that the Akatsuki was connected to this village. Are you the leader of the group, Nagato?" Jiraiya asked with narrowed eyes. "Yahiko is dead. He was taken from us by Hanzo. But that is something Danzo should know very well." It was Konan who responded. "What do you mean by that?" Jiraiya asked with suspicion. Nagato walked away from Konan and then past Jiraiya. He stood over the balcony and looked down the streets before responding. We were doing well in our group with Yahiko as our leader. Our group earned many admirers and many comrades joined us. I'm sure our actions even reached your ears. Jiraiya nodded. I kept receiving the information. I was really proud of your actions. Everything stopped when we were informed that you were dead. We did die, Nagato said in a cold tone. Our actions even reached Hanzo. We met him once and he supported our work. We had his blessings. One day, he called us out and we went to him. But it turned out to be a trap. Hanzo was under the illusion that we were just power-hungry children who were after his power. He tricked us, and that was when Yahiko died. That was when we died. In order to protect his power, Hanzo betrayed us. But it turned out that he was fed false information by Danzo of the Hidden Leaf. Danzo feared that we might overthrow Hanzo and that would threaten his power. Hanzo was his ally, so he didn't want to lose that. When Hanzo laid the trap for us, he even offered Hanzo his shinobi. Our group had grown in strength and in numbers. To Danzo, our actions were not good. Our growth wasn't good. It was a threat, and so he conspired with Hanzo to get rid of us. That bastard. That is all for today, Jiraiya-sensei. We have been hospitable because you were once our sensei and you treated us well. But you must leave this village. We do not want any trouble and would appreciate it if you left. We will not answer any of your questions and will prefer it if you left in the same way you came in. As you can see, this village is enjoying its peace and growth. We do not wish to have any interaction with the outside world, for you have brought us nothing but pain and destruction. Nagato said those words in a powerful tone. Konan will escort you out. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes dangerously. What makes you think that I will simply leave like this? You have obviously been rebuilding and you're no longer the same Nagato as you were. I wouldn't forgive myself if you ended up being a threat to the elemental nations and I let it happen. If we had plans to be your enemy, you wouldn't be standing here with us, Jiraiya-sensei, Nagato said, walking away from the balcony. Jiraiya got the message loud and clear. If Nagato thought he was an enemy, they would have been fighting now. That much was apparent and clear. No, it should have been clear from the start. These people were not afraid to fight him, just as he wasn't afraid to do it. Perhaps for him it would be out of responsibility for having spared their lives and trained them. What really happened to you, Nagato? Nagato didn't say anything, he was already walking away. Jiraiya-sensei, please let me escort you out peacefully. There will be time to talk, but we don't have anything more to say to you now. We have said we want to say to you, Konan said to Jiraiya in a stern tone. Are you going to force things? Jiraiya glanced at the silent Naruto for a moment before shaking his head. No. Konan nodded. Please don't try to sneak in again, and we would appreciate it if what you discovered doesn't find its way to the nations that surrounds us. We are not ignorant of what is happening in the world outside. Nagato was Uzumaki and he was alive. It made him the second Uzumaki was alive but not in Uzushio Gakure. A combination of Nagato and Naruto? That was just a frightening thought. But did these two not have any connections with the clan? With Nagato, it would be doubtful to think that the Uzumaki would not approach him if they know he was alive. This great revelation just changed everything now. He had thought Naruto was the child of prophecy, but if Nagato was alive, then it was one of them. So, was it Nagato or Naruto? Was it both? If it was one of them, the other would desire to save the world and the other would seek destruction. If they worked together, would it be for destruction? Jiraiya didn't want to dismiss that possibility. They have both been wronged and could have strong emotions about the issue. He had his work cut out for him. In the next month or so, before they returned to Konoha, he would be forced to work hard to try to make sure that Naruto becomes the savior of this world. There was another problem of Danzo. He would deal with this. Konan, Jiraiya started calmly. Is this village connected to Uzushio? Its actions seem familiar to what Uzu is doing. Both these villages have also suffered in the hands of the great nations. Are you connected? Is Uzushio also building its military strength while on lockdown? It is pointless to ask these questions, I will not answer them, Konan said. She was walking behind the two Konoha shinobi. At this stage, I am tempted to force you to answer questions, Jiraiya said with a smile. It is me and Naruto. We can take you down silently before Nagato even notices. Konan didn't say anything, she kept her silence and kept walking. Minutes later. Talk about a plot twist, Jiraiya could still not comprehend what had just happened in the rain. He'd gone to find intel in a land that was supposed to be in a civil war, but he'd found a peaceful village which was prospering. But what he found next has truly put a spanner in everything that he had been thinking. He would have to redraw all his conclusions and even consult with the toads. They had said a child of prophecy, not children. It possibly couldn't mean 2 of his students were somehow part of the plot, could it? Jiraiya shook his head. He needed more time to think about this matter. I can't believe that they are still alive, he said as they made the distance with the hidden rain. People who don't want to be seen fake their deaths many times. It happens. It is a good way to disappear and not have people still look after you. Naruto responded quietly. I guess I am no longer the child of prophecy, huh? Jiraiya frowned. I don't know, he said. I don't really know. Days ago, you were saying you are positive that I am the child of prophecy. You should really make up your mind, sensei. Our world is full of many surprises, and if you allow them to change your every decision, you'll be filled with indecision for the rest of your life. At this moment, you can't choose between me and Nagato. You have gone all your thinking maybe this is the one, maybe not him, maybe this one. You have lived long enough, sensei. You need to decide on who you believe is the child of prophecy. I'm saying this because it also affects me. You cannot come and tell me that I could be responsible for either destruction or be the one who saves this world, and then the next moment you say, you really don't know. If you are full of indecision, nothing happens. You sow nothing but confusion. Unknown location. Sasuke stared into the eyes of his brother with nothing but hatred. The fact that the man even smiled infuriated him even more. Itachi. He growled. Sasuke-kun, Itachi said. I see you rushed over here after receiving my message. Do you think you have the strength to face me, now? I watched your battle with Naruto-kun. I was quite honestly disappointed. What was some months ago? Sasuke responded with gritted teeth. I see, Itachi said. Come, Sasuke-kun. Fight me. If you defeat me, I will answer all your actions. I'm sure you are curious about why I did what I did. But if I win, I will take your eyes. Alright guys, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. As always, the rest of the story is already out over on Patreon, link to that will be in the description. Anyways, until next time, peace.